What up, my fellow challenge lovers? Welcome to The Challenge Historian, where we dive deep into all things the challenge, past, present, or future, if it's happening in the challenge universe, and we are here to document it. I am your host and dedicated challenge historian, Jacob Hollabaugh. Thank you so very, very much for being here with me today. On today's pod, it's a big one. It's a celebration. It's delving into the past. All about the past today on the pod with a dash of presence and even a dash of the future maybe at the end. But we are doing our first ever cast member interview. We've got the great, the legend, the OG Dan Setzler, two-time champion. You may remember Dan from the early days of the Challenge 2000, Battle of the Seasons, Battle of the Sexes 2. An absolute legend and an absolute great fun guy to get to talk with. We chopped it up about it all. We covered all 3 seasons he was on in very deep detail, talked about all the biggest moments from the season, his experience, what he learned, what he's up to now in his life. So everything is covered here. We go deep, 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 deep. You're going to love it. I had a great time chatting with him. It was so fun. I think Dan, he's one of those guys that one of the cast members from those early years, because those seasons aren't, up available to stream. His 3 seasons are all in that first 9. They're not available. He gets lost in the woodwork a little bit sometimes, but he is a true OG, a true legend, a 2-time champion, 3-time finalist, near perfect, flawless record in his challenge career, and is one of those that would be amazing to get back into the challenge fold today in an all-stars type of setting, which of course we cover at the end of the conversation. So I think you're going to love this. It was such a blast. It was such an honor to have Dan on the show. Hoping to have him back again sometime in the future, because even though we talked for literal hours here, there's so much great things, we couldn't possibly have gotten to it all, but we got to a lot. Before we get to that interview, though, couple quick programming reminders. First and foremost, Challenge USA is over. The controversial, wild, twisty-turny finale aired last night. That recap episode of this podcast went up as well, so you can listen to that right now. We will be back next Wednesday morning with our full season Challenge USA recap, awards, everything, wrapping that up, putting a bow on it, putting it in the history books for good. We will also be back next Monday with the Island rewatch. The rewatch series is back. Paige from Most Likely To will be joining me to recap that very impactful season of the Challenge, the Island, and then next week, at the end of the week, on Friday, we will have our first ever inductee into the Challenge Historian Official Hall of Fame. So that's coming. And next week, it's Survivor time. So we are going to be covering Survivor. I mentioned that on the last couple podcasts. We won't be doing that on this feed. That'll be on the Most Likely To feed with Paige. I'll be hopping over there every week to cover Survivor during that season. And by the end of this weekend, I'm hoping, I think we will have some sort of season 38 announcement to be responding to and getting ready to prepare for covering that season. So all kinds of great content coming your way. But for now, the great content coming your way is this amazing interview with Dan Setzler. So without further ado, let's take it to my conversation with Dan. All right, challenge lovers, we've got a very special guest here with us today. This man first came into our hearts and minds way back in 1998 when he debuted on Road Rules Northern Trail. He'd go on to compete in 3 seasons of the Challenge, where he would not only endlessly entertain you, me, everyone watching, but would also kick his fair share of ass as he became a 3-time finalist, 2-time Challenge champion. True OG, legend of the game, Dan Setzler is joining me today. Dan, thank you so much for being here. How are we doing today, my man?
Hey everybody, I'm doing really great. Thanks for having me here, getting to talk about some stuff from about 20 years ago, and I'm excited to do that. But yeah, whatever we want to say, let's do it.
All right. Well, I kind of want to get right to Challenge 2000 without too much road rules and the other seasons, kind of as quickly as possible, but I think a little table setting is appropriate first. I know you've recently done the Challenge Mania podcast, a wonderful interview with Scott and Derek over there. For those who haven't listened, listen to this first and then go listen to that as well. But there was a lot of road rules talk on there. And since I was 7, 8 when that came out and you can't watch it anywhere today, I've got a little less on that. But for some table setting, Who was Dan Setzler at the time of, 1997 when you filmed Road Rules? How old were you? Where were you living? What's going on in your life? And how did you find yourself getting cast on an MTV reality competition show?
That was 19 years old. I was sophomore year of college. I had went to Purdue University in Indiana for my first year of college, and then I moved back to Minnesota. Boilermaker, yeah. And it wasn't my deal out there. It was just a little too much in the farm fields of Indiana, and so it just wasn't my thing. I'm from
West Lafayette. Wasn't for you?
No, honestly, it was a little too rural for me.
Yeah.
Like I went there for engineering, and I did ROTC. Actually, I did like the Navy ROTC, and nothing about it was right. So I came back. And Minneapolis is a way more metropolitan area. I know a lot of people don't think that because it's like Midwest, but after like Chicago in the Midwest, Minneapolis is it, if you ask me, in terms of art and music and like being a cool city. You get, anyway, so I was 19, and back in the day, it was the summer of 97. We went from Vancouver to New York City, and we took about 10 weeks to do that in a Winnebago. And I don't know what's better than that. You're 19 years old, and half the time you're in Canada, so you can drink legally. So that was good because I was just like, getting into my whole college drinking career. And so it was like the best summer of my life. Honestly, still, it was just adventures. There was a lot of, we had the previous shows, or the previous Road Rule before mine or whatever, a lot of exotic locations, a lot of beaches, a lot of whatever. And I got Canada, and it was a lot of farms and like, it was a lot of, that kind of stuff. But I can't complain. It was amazing. We stayed in a lot of like trailer parks that first season. Yeah. So it was like do a mission or something cool and fun for a day. And then it would be 5 to 7 days of hang out at a trailer park. Yeah. We took all your credit cards. We took all your money. You can't do anything, so there was a lot of like downtime, but it was still just really fun. You get put in a place with all these different what's great is that every time you go on these things, there's going to be personalities there, Yeah. So, and that's my favorite thing is like, there's a reason why the people got put on these shows. It's because their personalities are something special, whether it's because they're a train wreck and people want to watch it for TV, or they're like really amazing, good, like, conscious people that are awesome. So every time you go on it, you meet these amazing people. And so I didn't care that I was like hanging at the farms in like Calgary and things like that.
Yeah. So you're obviously watching Road Rules before you were on it. Were you actively trying to get on just Road Rules? Were you possibly like Real World, Road Rules, any MTV, any show? Were you sending in auditions? Did somehow you just stumble across a casting call? Like what? How did you get the initial opportunity, I guess?
The way I remember it is I saw Bill Bellamy. I don't know if you remember him. He was a comedian guy. He was from Def Comedy Jam and that stuff.
Yep.
And he was VJing, and it was just like at the end of the VJ shows, like the countdown shows. And it was like, if you want to be on Road Rules or Real World, send in your videotape. So we sent in VHS, back and forth. And so I'm an adventurous guy. I also I've always been into like doing musicals and like theater and that kind of stuff. Like when I was growing up, I was an athlete, so I kind of quit that. But right about the time that I was watching and saw Bill Bellamy come on for that stuff, like I had just picked up the guitar and I was starting to do more creative stuff. And I just wanted to go do some adventures. I thought it'd be really fun. Like, honestly, I watched that stuff back in those days. They had like the marathons on the weekends, so we'd go out partying, Thursday, Friday, And then like Saturday all day was like the marathons, so we watched that. So I was like, I want to be on that stuff, like adventure and being on TV. Like, I don't know, it's more fun than just
Yeah,
hanging out in your own town. So I just wanted to get
absolutely.
out and see some stuff. So
Yeah,
that's kind of where
absolutely.
I was. But I mean, I was in business school at University of Minnesota, and it was just perfect.
Yeah.
What
Then
person, it's like the best college ever.
I can, having not done it, but
Yeah,
wanting to have done it, I'm sure a lot of people listening are
yeah,
like me, wanted to then, now, every day would love that type of adventure and experience. I can totally concur with you.
yeah.
It's basically 2 years then, really, I think about 2 years from when you filmed Road Rules to when you ended up filming Challenge 2000.
Yep.
What were you up to in those 2 years? And were you actively trying to get back on another show? Was there expectation that there'd be more opportunity with MTV? And when did that first call about something called the challenge come
Mm.
around to you?
Back then we had no concept of what the challenge was. We were on road rules, so that was kind of like a halfway challenge,
Yeah.
because it was half about being on the road and doing the missions and stuff. From 98 when I got off the show and saw it on TV, and then yeah, you're right. It was about every 2 years they kind of called me back. It was never MTV dealing with me. It was being a Murray,
Being a
the
Murray, yeah.
production company. So
Mhm.
I always dealt with them. So I never
Mhm.
saw like MTV letterhead, and that I never felt like I was
Yeah.
dealing with that. And so they just were like, hey, you want to go do another thing? And we didn't have any concept of what a challenge would be or like what that was. So of course I said yes, because it was a great adventure and I made some money
And
and
you
it
were
was
like,
great.
this one might not be just Canada.
Yeah, yeah. And challenge, yeah, exactly. And then challenge 2000 was the coolest one of all time for me because it was like it was rockstar. It was two tour buses that were like empty challenge 2000 on the side of the buses, like everywhere we stopped. I mean, riding on the road all day long, 5 or 6 hours to go to the next place, like people honking, like it was just kind of mayhem everywhere. And it was, like I said, rock star. So it was just a different level. The following challenge 2002 and 2004, we were at resorts and we were kind of sequestered. But the
Mhm.
challenge 2000, like, I mean, can you imagine if you like did that right now with like these challenge people? Like if you put them in two buses that were like stopping in every small town along the way across the entire US, like they should do that. Like that is
Oh,
so much internet content. It would be ridiculous. Like people would travel from the four corners of the country to like follow that shit. They really would.
yes.
Like, I don't know why they don't do that.
You're
Why?
you're preaching to the choir. It's one of
Yeah.
my, I obviously, as someone who considers myself a historian of this show in game, I of course
Mhm.
have opinions about how they could make it better or
Yeah.
change it up or whatever. And one of my biggest things is, so
What?
this whole year I've been doing this rewatch series. So I started on season one and I've rewatched
Mm,
every one and done a podcast about it. And the
mm,
thing I couldn't stop talking about on Challenge 2000, the season before and after, was the live audience aspect and the fact that like you guys were like, when you say rock stars, you're rock stars. Like you all are, especially on Challenge 2000. Teck specifically is like
oh, he's the
actually
best.
seems like he's treated like Michael Jackson, deservedly so. But like that's how much people were like so excited, and I feel like they couldn't do it the exact same way now, but they could do like for the daily challenges or for like an elimination match or something. They could have an audience and like I'll sign an NDA. It's not that hard. Like
Yeah.
put up, hey, we're gonna be in this place on this day. You got to come. You're going to wait in line. There's security and you sign an NDA. You cannot talk about it
Yeah.
anywhere. You got to put your social chains down, whatever. There's a way to do it. It would be incredible because it's so fun watching that season and seeing. I was a little ahead of myself, but
Yeah.
what was your guys' reaction? Did you know that that was the kind of fanfare, the kind of stardom that you all had from being on those shows? Were you kind of ignorant to that? And then it's thrown in your face like, holy cow, there's a lot of people who like
Yeah.
think we're really, really cool. Like, were you aware of that going in? Expected that at all?
Personally, I was totally ignorant. I mean, I don't think I really even thought about it until after I was done doing it, but when we showed up to all the things we did, it was like thousands of people would show up because what the hell else were they going to do? It's like small towns or wherever we were, and they would literally just put the call out and have like 4 high schools show up, to come and view it, you're just like, it was just weird, and not, I mean, I can't believe like we're talking about it right now. I haven't really thought about this, but yeah, like why don't they do that kind of concept? It would just, even if it was like, even if you had, because they film you, 16 hours a day on the road, and even if like 15 hours of it were like totally annoying fanfare weirdo, like stuff you would never put on the show, you're gonna get so much more content. I just feel like, but whatever. That's just me being like
I'm with you,
TV editor guy. But yeah, that would be how cool. Honestly, I don't know why they don't do it. I mean, with the internet and how it's running now, and how artists are blowing up with like all that raw kind of like, footage, you would get so many things from that, as opposed to like putting all these people only interacting with themselves, the 10 or 15 people that are there at some resort or some like, exotic location.
Yeah, it would help with the mental side of it too, of the, there's a lot of cast that it is what it is, that, the experience you're going through has its downsides or its mental difficulties of that atmosphere, but maybe giving you a little interaction with the outside world would kind of ease some of the negative sides of being locked in a house with the same, 20 people plus 20 production for a month or two on end.
I mean, I get that like locking people in a house might drive them a little crazy, so you get more
that's part of it
from that purpose,
but
you're going to get that regardless. I mean, the people who would be like, if you did Challenge 2000 with 2 tour buses with like those people traveling across the US where everybody knows them, and everybody knows that if they come up to those buses, they're going to have a chance of being in some of the content, like it would go nuts. You'd have to hire a whole security staff, and I think people would want to watch that. I'd want to watch that. It'd be stupid. I'd be like, these people are idiots driving around on a tour bus, and like, I'd love it. And I'd love to be one of those idiots.
Well, we're not alone. I do know that the Godfather, Mark Long, is working on
He's bucking for the tour bus challenge.
He's originally, when Paramount Plus was announced as the new streaming service of CBS, and they announced the All-Stars with it, which is obviously Mark Long and the We Want OG movement's baby. They also announced that they were bringing Road Rules back. They then scrapped that, but I know Mark is working very hard right now behind the scenes to possibly get a Road Rules style, in the Winnebagos again, hopefully maybe with live audiences again, style show put together with possibly some folks from the past. So maybe send him a little DM after this and let him know that you'd be interested in hopping on.
We're formulating some deals. Let me take a quick just side note here. Teck is amazing. Teck is awesome. Like Teck and Theo Vaughn are like, they're the same like kind of mentality when you hang out with those guys. I just want to say that because Teck is like, I don't know, I haven't met a lot of people like that where their personality is completely infectious and completely like real and awesome. But that guy, and because Theo is like one of my like dearest like friend kind of, I love Theo. Theo and Timmy are my guys from these shows. And they're just like the most real people I know. And Teck has that. Teck is like the man like that. I don't know. I just wanted to like give a shout out to him. I haven't talked to him since 2000. Yeah. So, but he is that good of a cool dude. I just love that guy. Anyway.
Yeah. He's one of the ones that got away from the show, and thankfully they've brought him back in on the All-Stars world, and we're getting to see what a star he is again, and still is. Never skipped a beat. He did, he was in the Van Wilder movie and did some other acting stuff, which was really cool. Now he's crushing as DJ, comedian. If you want to see him soon, not to plug other people's content, but I love as much the Challenge Mania that you came down to recently, spur of the moment. They're doing another event of that, but stand-up comedy mixed with Challenge Mania event this November, and Teck is one of the 4 people doing comedy. So November 5th, Chicago.
What city is? Oh, Chicago.
It's in Chicago, yeah.
Oh,
I'll
drive off of that. Yeah, November 5th.
Come on down. I've already got extra tickets. So if it's sold out or Scott wouldn't hook you up with an extra ticket, I got you covered. But
indeed, I'd love to see
Teck do some comedy.
I'm telling you, man, those 3 guys, Theo, Timmy, and Teck, are the guys that I'm just like, those people have this thing that I haven't met in anybody else. With Teck is he just who he is so freeing and funny, obviously funny, but just more, it's just awesome. It's performance, but you don't ever feel like he's performing to anybody. And so that's the same exact way that hanging out with Theo and Timmy is. They're just so funny. I mean, you just want to be around that kind of silliness and mentality. Anyway, I just think it's really separate of any interview I've ever done or any shows I've ever done. Those 3 guys, I've just noticed something that's just kind of a special thing about them. Anyway.
That definitely comes through on screen, because I've got some Timmy and Theo related questions coming up when we get to some of those seasons. They're absolute favorites of mine, as is Teck. And on that note of, he definitely, all of you guys seem to be pretty comfortable with the kind of stardom and the audiences, everything we talked about. Teck most of all, and they definitely, constantly chant his name at different places you'd go, which brings me to, we're just going to go through kind of the Challenge 2000, mostly chronologically here. A couple things I want to highlight or ask about. And the first one relates to one of the times where you had maybe the biggest crowd that you ever had, where Teck was absolutely, among all of you, just a star of stars, was Redneck Games. One of the daily challenges you guys, I don't know if it was in Kentucky or where it was.
It was
in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, it was Dublin, Georgia.
Okay.
And the funny part about it is that you have dum-dums. They have I cannot remember the name. What's the zipper company?
Zipper company. I don't know.
YYK.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. On every they have that in off in this weird spot in Dublin, Georgia. There's this big, looks like FBI secret headquarters in the middle of the red mud rolling hills in Georgia, and it's the YYK zipper thing, and I was like, that's so cool. I just
nice.
That's the same as the dum-dums. It's the that corporate is the dum-dums their corporate headquarters? Does it look like a Willy Wonka factory? Is it kind of out of place, or is it small? It just looks like a building.
Not. It's a very plain, nondescript building with a little scrolling ticker on the outside that says "Dum-Dums made this year 2 billion" or whatever it is.
That's all they keep
track. It's a little tracker. It's very.
That's how good dum-dums are. They don't even have to advertise. They don't even. That's all they. Anyway.
Everyone in our town knows and thinks about them. But so this town has that zipper company. It also has this Redneck Games Festival, which you guys drop in on and take part in.
Yeah.
It's iconic. I named it recently. I did, for my 100th podcast episode, I did 100 challenge takes or opinions, where I just tried to name 100 different just statements about it. And I said in that, Redneck Games is the most fun and funniest daily challenge that's ever happened across the show. And it was in the 3rd season. You guys do a whole bunch of wild stuff, eat pig's feet, controversial pie eating contest during it. But the best part of all of it is right at the end, the final stage of it, which is a mud pit belly flop competition.
Yes.
That I want to ask you about. I'm going to start by, though, showing you your performance in that mud pit belly flop competition so that we can jog your memory a little bit, and then we'll be able to grade it after the fact. What form?
So yeah, right.
What form? I mean, a deserved 5 out of 5.
I
The
went for
crowd's
it all
going
there.
wild there. Was this day as fun as it looked? And do you have any idea what right before you said I am a something? I don't know if it was I am a legend, what before you jumped in and did that perfectly
Yeah.
legendary belly flop. Do you remember what you said there or anything about this day?
I said I am a redneck. And it's really funny because so I did that first for that jump. I said I am a redneck, and it's like really embarrassing for me actually. And I'll tell you, I don't know, did you see I sent you the picture of me jumping over Las Vegas, the strip
Yeah,
entrance?
and
So,
your photo quality way better
yeah.
than my video quality of that season and everything. Was that something they
Yeah.
took and like gave to you afterwards? Because it's
That was
perfect.
somebody's personal camera, and I don't even think that wasn't digital. That was digital camera that somebody like took that. That was either my camera that somebody used, and they said, but I have that actual hard copy of that picture. But so honestly, now that I look at it, it's the same swan dive.
Yeah, you
The
perfected
exact
it
same
off of the
thing.
Vegas
Yeah,
Tower.
yeah, the Vegas Tower. Yeah, I'm really proud of that swan dive because like a lot of people went, and there was like 12 of us, and so we all did it, and they all like fell back and like just kind of like melted off the side of that thing. But I was like, fuck this. I'm just gonna swan dive. If like this bungee doesn't catch me, I'm swan diving to my death. And like it was great because like the guys who made that at the top of the Stratosphere Tower, they were like the original bungee jump guys, like the guys who invented it. So like they spent like, it was like 300 or 400 grand just making this thing on top of the Stratosphere Tower. And so anyways, getting back to the Dublin days and the I am a redneck. So I screamed, I am a redneck. And then I jumped in. So the day that I went and jumped off the Stratosphere Tower, I think it's like a thing before I'm doing something really scary. And I went to this other thing where I was like, and it was like this high pitched voice, like I was so nervous, and I was like, cut me off, y'all. Like it was like this really high pitched voice. Like I was like, but I was so scared, And so I still, if you go back to that footage, you'll hear me kind of do the same thing where I'm like about to do something, whatever. And so for the Redneck Games, I was like, I am a redneck. And to me, it's embarrassing. I feel like it's a high pitched voice. I jumped in that mud thing. I'll tell you, we did that for 10 weeks was the whole thing. And that was towards the end, but for another 10 weeks, I still had red mud coming out of my ears. Like it was like it was the craziest, weirdest thing, like jumping into that.
You definitely led face first. And
that's what I wanted to do. I was like, if I am a redneck, I'm going to go I put arms back. I was like, I wanted to do the best belly flop I could. Anyway.
Yeah. You were one of a few during that one. There was some very impressive flops. Yours definitely among them. Moving to a couple other moments from that season. One of them, that season and the one or two right around it were really, really big on celebrity cameos. You had a few in your season. They were almost all athletes. Roy Jones Jr. showed up once and faked like he was going to beat David Burns to death, which was great. You also, though, got to play a football game coached by Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks and some other NFL players. Yeah. And I know on your previous interview with Scott and Derek at Challenge Mania, you mentioned your father was a big football player, got drafted by the 49ers. So obviously football in the family. When you got to walk out on a field and see like, holy cow, like they brought in some like, not just NFL players, but like big names. They had just won the Super Bowl like a year or two before. Were you thinking of your dad at all? And like how cool it would be to tell him that you got to do this? Were you super excited? Did the celebrity cameos have a big effect on you or not?
Well, definitely when I went to play with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and those guys, Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks. Yeah, my dad, like I was thinking how like much fun he would have had hanging out with those guys, because we got to hang with them. Actually, it was like cool.
Piggy tried to hang out with one of them like a lot longer than just the bar that night.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not gonna say anything about that night or the couple nights that we hung out with those guys, but like hanging out with like those NFL stars and like seeing them interact with people is exactly what you'd think it would be.
Yeah. Did it give you guys some perspective of like, oh, we're not the stars for the night? Or
100%. Yeah, like they would do and say anything they wanted, and it just all worked. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it.
Must be nice. That's what playing on Sundays gets
made
you.
Me feel better about myself. I was like, oh, I've said that to girls before, and that did not work, but I get why it's working now. I was like, that's some fucked up shit. Like, you should not say that to other people. And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay. That's all I'm gonna say about it. But yeah, it was I learned a lot from hanging out around those people. It was cool.
So on the season, Road Rules kicks Real World's ass pretty much the whole season, which was a theme across the 6 different seasons where it was Real World versus Road Rules. A lot of Road Rules kicking ass, but they did get you guys good one time, like really, really good. And that was when they made up a fake mission, printed out documents at Kinko's, made it look all official, and convinced you and your whole team on your single night in South Beach in Miami. They convinced you to run around doing silly, ultimately pointless tasks, just completely waste your one night there doing this fake mission that didn't count. It's probably the best prank in the history of the show. There's been a lot of pranks in challenge houses. You've been a part of a few of them on the receiving and the giving end, but this one I think is all time because no one's ever made a team do a fake mission and waste a night in South Beach before. That's pretty incredible. Do you remember at all how believable this was, how much convincing it maybe took, how angry you might have been after the fact, realizing that it was all for nothing and that it was all a prank by them?
It was, I totally remember it. It was like going into it, we totally believed it. The whole thing about that one is that they needed the production staff to pull that off the way they did it. Because they had like the notes and the hard copy stuff that they sent us had all the right fonts, had all it was the same as all the clues we'd had before. So it wasn't like the other team they got help. So
sure.
So when we figured out the prank, it wasn't like I was just like, okay, you got us. Like, okay, way to go. Like, I was gonna fall for that every time, like, because we were doing these missions and whatever. So it was cool they did that. I don't really think that they came up with it. I think the directors came up with that.
Yeah, to get a little extra content. It definitely worked. They got the entire episode.
They should do that in all these episodes. They should do more of that shit where it's like fake pranks.
Well, I was gonna say they definitely got some help from production, but the amount of help that was needed is way less than like they couldn't really do this today without it being 100% a production contrived, because like the way they like get clues or announce things or whatever today is like there's a lot more to it, and so it'd be a way more of a thing to try to pull that off. But it's definitely a memorable episode and moment in challenge history. The only time someone got faked into, I think you guys at one point had to paint an old man's toenails, I believe was one of the things.
Oh,
they
had
buried in the sand.
Shit, yeah.
Thankfully, Los had friends who were down to get their picture taken naked, just like on the spot, because I think that was the first thing you had to do. It was a wild, wild night. Did after that happen, did that change the dynamic between the teams? Was there any bitterness, or did you get over it pretty quick and be like, all right, that was kind of funny. You made us waste a night in Miami, but like, it's fine, whatever. Or was it bitterness?
That was the end of our trip. We had been kicking their ass the entire time. So it didn't really like matter to us. Like, it wasn't like when we learned about it, we weren't like totally surprised. It was just like, oh, okay, well, we'll give you this one. That's cool. So it didn't matter to us too much. I mean, we're in South Beach, we're like having the time of our lives. So
yeah, absolutely.
We just kind of saw it as like a production did that to us, and okay, cool.
Yeah.
Get us one more time.
Okay. I've got another clip here to play for you real quick.
Yeah.
And there's going to be two questions that come out of it, one a little more serious than the other, but I'll
Sure.
quickly play this for you.
Dan's an incredible team leader. He brings this calmness to the whole group.
Our team is sad, man.
That's the last crunches I ever did.
Just because we don't need any more drama.
All right, so I play that clip for two reasons. The first one is that was not the only time we saw you getting a solid workout in this season, but the side crunches on top of the picnic table. I've got to know, is that still in the repertoire? How'd you come up with the placement? Was the grass not just, not soft enough for you? How did you end up on top of the picnic table for your ab session?
I can't really remember how that happened, but I'm guessing that number one, at those trailer parks, it's just like hard crabgrass in Florida. So I probably just moved up to the top of it because of that, because you get grass itch if you're in the grass. But I also since I've been on those shows in the past 20 years or whatever it is, that's what I do every day is mobility and that kind of training. So I'm people say, oh, you do yoga and stuff. Yeah, I took a yoga class 20 years ago, and every day since then, I just make up my own shit. So that one is I probably was trying to get off the grass, but I also was thinking about how gravity's pushing down on me, and being on a flat surface probably helps my muscles reorganize themselves, that kind of shit.
So some thought was going into it.
Yeah, there's some deeper shit. Yeah, but mostly it's probably the grass. That's what I'm thinking.
All right. And a more serious note then. So in that clip is the beginning of a moment on the show. Your team, the Road Rules team, while kicking ass, did have some drama internally that whole season, and most notably Los and Piggy found themselves at odds a lot of time, and a lot of those got to be very real world, real raw situations. Discussions turned to arguments over, race issues, experience issues, how different people wanted to interact with the world. And you, of anyone on your team, really became a mediator at different times. And that clip is alluding to right before you eventually would go. Los had stayed at a hotel for the night. You were the one to go talk to him, bring him back into the fold, and convince him to some degree, or help him, give him a ride back to hey, let's stick it out these next 5 days. What was being that mediator kind of going from that fun, crazy adventure to holy cow, there's some very real, raw stuff going on here, and I guess I can try to be some sort of mediator, help this out, and obviously some very heavy topic matter. You're being filmed while all this is happening. What was that kind of experience like? I would imagine it could have been, was it jarring at all to kind of switch from, we're doing this fun, crazy game show, to now I'm talking to some people about these really real things. They're still filming this. How was that for you?
That was actually a really real moment. You never know when people are playing to the camera or not playing to the camera on these shows, and all people's motivation. I don't hold it against anybody if they are being extra dramatic or extra confrontational or extra sexual or anything. It's you're coming on this stuff, you're trying to get, whether you're doing it for personal reasons or whatever it is, so the whole low situation, I don't know. I never really knew why he was so, off put by it, whatever, but he obviously stayed somewhere else. And so, that whole day when I went there and did that, I thought, I was I just want to tell you it was real. I wasn't trying to be trying to get content for the show. I wasn't in that mentality. I really wanted to make my experience there better, and I felt he was going to go and do and whatever he wanted to, kind of separate from us, and he had kind of separated himself anyway. So that was a real moment. I just was hey man, I just want to let you know, I will either kind of do what you are thinking, or I don't know, I'll just be accommodating because I just want to see if we can make this cool. So that was kind of a cool moment. It wasn't like a contrived, like me trying to like make drama.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, did that come natural to you? Is that a type of person like you were in your real life, or was your team at all like, someone's got to do this? Like, Dan, we nominate you, or were you kind of on your own? Like, someone should do this.
that one,
I'm available.
just,
I got the car keys. I'll go have this conversation. I'm interested in making this better.
I felt like I was the best person for the job. So I just went and did it.
Yeah.
Is all I did. And it wasn't like there was really much of a job, but I was like, I don't know. I didn't like, I'm a non-confrontational person anyways. You know, I'm a Minneapolis, like Minnesota, Midwest, nice kind of thing, you know? So for me to go and into a situation where I was going to like face some confrontation like that from a person that like, I don't really have any invested interest in, you know, for me to do that is kind of what we're saying here, is like the important part of what we're taking. For some reason, I really wanted to make the situation better, and you know, that's what you got out of it. You know, it was so
very cool. All right.
Yeah.
Final question on Challenge 2000 before I move to the next season.
For sure.
The end of the season, final mission you guys have to do. You guys get to go skydiving. And this moment is one I cite all the time. I have been known in the past to say that, only half joking, that someone from production deserved to go to jail for allowing this daily challenge to happen. You guys go skydiving, and you don't skydive with someone. You jump out of the plane, they let go of you, you have to land on your own, which is actually full on illegal now. You can't just do
Is it illegal in all the states?
Yeah, you can't, your first like, I don't know how many, it's like 15 to 20 jumps. You cannot be not attached to someone else. It's just for obvious safety reasons. It's a difficult thing. And I always look back at this. Yes gets pretty hurt. He tries to play it off a little better. Amaya goes to the hospital. Thankfully, you and others do amazing. You landed, bullseye, everything. What were the feelings going into this? Were you excited about it? And what, if any, like, did they give you training? Did you have like a little seminar before of like, this is how you land on a parachute? Good luck. What was everyone feeling? What was that experience like? Because it blows me away every time I think about it, that it was even allowed to happen, and that thankfully only one person went to the hospital and was, you know, totally fine after. But it's quite the moment in challenge history when things definitely, the safety standards were a little more lax back in the day, certainly.
Man, that was one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me. And everything you're saying is right. Like, I had all those same thoughts. How can they have us do this? You know, but obviously what like the training for those was, you can do a tandem one, and you just have like an hour or 2 or 3 of like a course there, and they go through all the safety stuff, or you can pay more and get a 24-hour day lesson about it. And then that's what we did. And then the next morning is when we went and did it, you know? And so going into it, we were thinking, okay, well, people do this, you know? So it wasn't like we were thinking this is like something that, it wasn't jumping out the stratosphere tower, something nobody had ever done before. So my mentality was like, okay, so people do this. I think it's really crazy that I'm going to be by myself up in the air, but yeah. And when we saw that, you know, because it was 6 people went up on the first flight and 6 people went up on the second flight, and I was on the second one, and the first person that came down, or one of the first people that came down, was and he came down with like 3 football fields away from where we were supposed to go. So like in the training, like they gave you a bunch of these aerial pictures and stuff. And so I had done a bunch of visualizing of like, you know, like when I was actually up there floating, and I was like, okay, I got to find this field I got to land into. I was like, oh, I'm looking at this picture of these 10 fields that I got to get to. And so I visualized the whole thing. But he came down so far away from where we were, and he came down with the wind. When you fall on those things, it's 20 miles. It's like kind of basically, it's like you're falling at a rate of 20 miles an hour, like down. And so when you land, if you land going with the wind and you got the wind behind you, you got your 20 miles an hour. And if it's a 10 mile an hour, or a 20 mile an hour wind, you're hitting the ground at 40. That's what Yes did.
Yeah.
That's not
good.
cool. That's how he got fucked up. But if you do it right, you go into the wind. So now I'm falling 20 into a 10 or a 20 mile an hour wind. So now it's only 5 or 10 miles an hour of like drop that you're or of speed that you're hitting the ground at. So that's what scared me. It was like, okay, Yes, just like then the other deal. But then on the same round, Veronica came down and she landed right in the fucking deal. And I was like, okay, I don't really know what's going on here. So I was totally confused. And I think I was like one of the last people. I think I was like one of the very last.
You're shown as the last one landing. It's editing, so I don't know if you were actually the last one.
I think I was like one of the last people. And so it was really crazy. That was a scary one. Like I can tell you about the Stratosphere Tower and jumping off that, how I almost died. But the one where the jumping out of the plane, and this was a part of their training, was they said, okay, so if the chute comes out and like it's twisted, like the line is twisted, okay, here's what you got to do. And I was like, okay, so if the line's twisted, then it can't billow out at the top, so it doesn't slow you down, so you're falling faster. And you see, so that's what happened to me. So the thing was twisted, and so what happens is, so you jump out of the plane, and then there's 2 instructors, and they're each holding onto your shoulders, so they fall with you. And then what you do is you pull the ripcord, so you slow up faster than them. And so they keep falling. So now you're by yourself. And they pull the ripcord for you. So you pull the ripcord. So now I'm falling. I see them leave. I'm by myself. I look up at my parachute and it's like all, janky. It's not like,
oh my goodness,
holding me. So I was like, okay, this is what they told me. I'm about to shit my pants, but I got to figure this out. And the training is you like kick your legs like a scissor kick, like to like switch yourself around. And like I tried it and I was going the wrong way the first time. So I was like, okay, so now, and keep in mind, I'm falling faster, I don't know, than I feel like I should be falling. I've never done this before, but I'm like, okay, this is really fucking scary.
The ground is right there.
Yes. Well, I mean, I'm up way high. I mean, I can, from the height I'm at, I can see the tip of Florida. So like, cause we are in Miami, whatever. And so that's how high up, it looks like I'm looking at a relief map of the United States kind of a thing. And so you don't have that ground rush feeling. So there's not that, but the excitement is like, okay. And I did a couple scissor kicks and all of a sudden just, whoo. And then I was like, it was the most beautiful experience I've ever had. It was so sunny, and it was like golden hour, about 4:00 in the afternoon. Like I said, I can see the tip of Florida. So I got the whole ocean I can see. And it was just like this slight breeze, and I'm just hanging. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever experienced. And then I fell to the ground. And then like, as I got closer to the ground, I started worrying about where I was. And they have a walkie-talkie on you. So once you get down to about 300 or 400 or whatever the feet is, then the walkie-talkie comes in. So I was talking to the dude that was like my instructor, and he was just telling me, like, he just guided me in. Like I had already visualized where I wanted to go. So I knew like how I should, like, ground underneath me should look to where I should go. But he was like, okay, toggle right, toggle left, toggle right, toggle left. And like, I mean, I was just like doing this, and it just was perfect. It was a perfect, like, I don't know how it happened, and I nailed it. And I came down on my feet. Veronica, she landed on her butt. I came down on my feet and just stuck it. It hurt like hell. Like I came down really soft, but like my knees were locked or something. And it hurt. Like my knees were hurting.
Feel good.
Yeah, I mean, I think I came down like maybe at like 20 miles an hour, or, some kind of just enough that like, because it was like rocks, it was soft. Yeah. But like, anyway, so that was a lot to explain all that, but well, it was a crazy experience. Like it was a really visceral, awesome experience.
Yeah, and it's definitely, again, because things like that are both possibly illegal now, and production's a little more buttoned up on what are we going to put these through. It's the type of stuff that only happened on some of these earlier seasons and not as much today. They still obviously do an incredible amount of extreme stuff, but there's a little more of a safety net involved in them nowadays. Moving then.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say a side note. My friend Tara, who was on my original show, she just texted me. She got a hold of the video. We did a WWF wrestling. We just did a quick mission with them in Calgary on my original show. And thinking about that day, the dude body slammed me. I mean, he's 6'5", 270, I'm guessing, and I'm 160, 5'10", and he body slammed me, and I was the first person to go. He body slammed me, but he made me land on my side, and I had I was seeing stars. I was all the whole production was okay, we can't have them do that, so they didn't do it to anybody else. They were like, okay, that is too much. So
guinea pig trial didn't go well.
Yes, there was a few moments like that were and that was actually the worst I ever got hurt on one of these, falling over the streets of Las Vegas or jumping out over, Florida, that. I didn't get hurt in all that stuff. But when I got body slammed, from 15 feet in the air, as hard as I can get slammed down on my side, you think your head goes boom, like that, and it was the worst. I was fucked up for a couple days on that one.
Yeah, that whiplash can be real. Very scary.
But it's I don't know. It's like a coal miner's mentality. It's a corporation, and they got insurance, so But there is a point where the producers or the directors are "We are human. We can't let you do this." But it takes a while. Where you get to that?
Yeah, we know you signed some contracts, but
they know you got insurance. It's your choice, idiot. It's
all right. Well, speaking of Tara and then Battle of the Seasons, you come back a couple years later. You're partnered with Tara. You guys are a part of the Road Rules team, but it's partners and teams at the same time. It's one of my favorite seasons ever. I think it's one of the best seasons of the entire run of the show. It's a very different experience than you've been on before because it's the first ever season where you're staying in one place the whole time. You're in houses, you're in Mexico. It's beautiful. It's awesome. And there's a baby in the house. So let me just start with that one. Both showing up. Did you know it was going to be a different, you're staying in one place? Did you like it when you showed up and saw oh, we're staying here the whole time? Was that cool or not cool? And then you realized someone brought their literal baby with them. What was the response to wait, there's a baby involved on this season? Are they in the cast? Are they not in the cast? What's going on here?
So that was Cabo San Lucas. And the first 3 or 4 nights we were there, we weren't on camera, and it was all the dudes sequestered in one place and all the girls in the other place, and that was the most fun 3 nights I ever had. We were it was just and that's where I met Timmy and Theo. And we didn't even know it, but we ended up being the guys on that one. And so I can remember more of those 3 nights than any other part of that whole trip, because when I guess when I came, we were on this resort, but what happened is we had those 3 nights, and then all of a sudden now we're doing the show. And then a day after the show happened, or 2 days into it, there was a huge hurricane. Yeah. So the whole place, I mean, entire hotels were washed out into the ocean. It was a major thing. So most of the roads were messed up. All we had was the workers and stuff that were at the resort that they lived on the resort to begin with, but we were just by ourselves, and it was you couldn't do anything. So they shut it down for a week or something, because there was nothing to do. But it was just a weird experience because of that. We were all the people in the town and all that were dealing with trying to get water and electricity and like trying to get back to a normal state. And we were, you know, jumping into pools like with a bunch of floaties and trying to like win 1,000 American dollars. You know, it just felt really weird.
Yeah.
And there was a couple times where like the people that were on the show, they went and did like some like cleanup stuff, you know, like cleaned up around the resort and whatever. And they were filming that. And I was like, I don't want to be a part of this crap. This is stupid. Like, I don't want this show and me being here like to be about me like helping these people. Like, it was weird to be there in the first place. So
yeah, I
don't know. That was a weird one. I enjoyed it a lot because of the people. And then, like you said, Baloo had her kid there, but like Baloo having the kid there was secondary to like Hurricane. You know, like I was like, might as well have a kid on this one, like
for a couple days. That's like the interesting talking point. And then you're like, so about this hurricane that's about to wipe us out. Yeah. Speaking of the hurricane, I have to ask then, during that break, they were filming at different times, and one of the times they're filming was one of the most legendary parties in the history of the challenge. You guys had a full-blown toga party in the middle of the electricity being out, being sequestered during a hurricane. And that episode is infamous for a lot of reasons. It's on the top of a lot of challenge fans' minds of, it looks like it would have been horrible to go live through that hurricane and everything that went down. But for that night of that party, it looks like the place I wish I could have been in all of challenge history. Do you have any memories of that party? And did you, Dan Setzler, go into the VIP room/closet of the party at any point that Cora was so viciously guarding?
I remember that you're like, you witnessed like people making the best of it. And it really was like it was a raw party, you know, like we had all been like sick for days because we all just had Montezuma's revenge from we just did not have the right food. So we'd all been sick for days and it was just raw. And like that party to me, it just like is us in bed sheets, like going from hotel room to hotel room. But it was awesome. It was, I don't know, like I did not take part in the closet. I should have. I definitely should. I was there was half the crew during that party was like completely sick. Like we were not, it was hard. We were just trying to make something good out of being.
It's a testament to, I mean, everyone on its personalities and why you were all getting cast on shows like this, that in the middle of this kind of horrible circumstances around you, you can be like, one, we all want to let loose, but two, you know, we're all kind of professionals at this. We're good at this. We're the type of personality like, should we have a toga party? That'll cheer everyone up for a couple hours. That'll give them something good for the cameras, whatever. It's a real testament to how this cast is one of the kind of real great casts in the history of the show, of just like these people all deserved and were on TV for a reason, and really kind of document that era of the types of people they were bringing on and the personalities and how great it was. And the fact that you can make this truly one of the like top 5 to 10 challenge moments of all time that gets referenced out of the middle of a hurricane is really, really something.
So the toga party, people bring that up a lot. I mean, honestly, I forgot about that until you brought it up. But yeah,
it's I say, obviously I was not at any of the great challenge parties in history. There's, you know, almost one every season. The best seasons have a really great party with them. I think it from the outside seems like the most interesting and fun one of all time, but it's certainly, while not everyone maybe agrees it's the coolest one ever, like I do, it's brought up a lot in the challenge world, just the people that were involved in it too, and just the circumstances, the whole thing. It's a very interesting one. And because no one can watch it anymore, there's these kind of big moments from these early seasons that no one can see, or even more like these like cult classic, like, you know, we can't watch them, but we can talk about them and we can reminisce, and we can hope to see him again. And we can hit up Jacob on Instagram and beg him to let us watch his files, even though that's illegal and he can't do it. So that whole season, you're partnered with Tara. You guys do really well. You're from after the first mission, for the second, third, fourth, and fifth, you're in the, you know, top 3, the inner circle. So you're never at jeopardy of going home. You kind of feel pretty safe the whole time. You're going to be there till the end.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to vote people off by being in that top 3, but your team, the only one that was kind of, quote unquote controversial at all was the very first one, which you weren't a part of making the decision when Yes and Veronica got sent home. After that, you guys pretty much seem to stick to like, whoever's doing the worst, you're going to go home. It's pretty cut and dry. We're not going to like play politics here, anything like that. So I know that maybe it wasn't the hardest decisions to have to make because you stuck to that system, but I know you've mentioned in the past you aren't a super big fan of like playing the politics in these games, and you liked that you didn't have to, like on a Road Rules Challenge 2000. So was it weird coming into this house and suddenly, even if your decisions were kind of cut and dry, being the one of the 6 people that 4 times in a row had to tell someone else your experience is done, you're going home, you don't get to stay to the end?
That one, yeah, I mean, the ones I was on, I didn't have a feeling of just that whole game of cutting people out and having to like be like fake in front of people or like, form alliances where I'm like lying to people and stuff. The last 2 when I was, they didn't really like, yeah, we kicked people off, but like you said, it was more of a performance based. It wasn't like this person, it wasn't a personal thing, or it never really made it be a personal thing. So I didn't ever have to feel
for your teams.
shitty.
It wasn't. Yes.
Yeah.
You were on the right team both seasons too. Like,
yeah.
Our team does it this way.
Honestly,
no one's feelings get hurt. The other teams, both of those seasons, were the first teams to ever get a little personal or get a little shady in their dealings. So you guys are, in that comfortable position all season long, or I guess you don't know, but every time you do better and better, you kind of know based on where the points are, like, I'm going to be able to make it to the end of this. The game changes halfway through. There's only 6 of you left on Road Rules, 6 left on Real World. Now you're kind of doing season more similar to what they had done before. We're like 6 on 6, one thing. You and Tara still do great. Road Rules does great the whole time. Your best performance, though, is you did get 1 daily challenge win where you and Tara win the whole challenge. It's called Hands on Saturn. You have to hold your hands and feet at different times on a block of ice on the beach in the shape of a Saturn car. You guys win. This challenge was famous for a couple moments. One I'm going to play for you and ask you about here in a moment. But the first one was your guy, Timmy, who decides in the middle of it I got to go to the bathroom. I'm not ready to be eliminated. I'm going to pee right here. A few minutes later, finds out I've got to sit down now, has to sit down in his pee. I forget, where were you standing in relation to him? Do you have any fond memories of that challenge in particular?
Totally. I kept telling him, I was like, dude, I was pretty much right next to him, or 1 person away, I think. I can't remember, but because he was talking, he's like, I think I got to pee. I was like, don't do it, man. You're going to be known as the fucking guy who pees. Like, don't do it, And he totally did it. And that's the power of Timmy. Like, nobody ever
he can
talked
pull it
about
off.
it. Yeah, he can pull it off. I mean, how many people can do that? I was scared for him, but like I said, he's the man.
His legend precedes him. That's far down the list of things to bring it up. And he's such a good guy that, yes, he can be the guy to be like, Timmy, remember when you had to sit in your own pee? And it can be like a totally positive, like, let's laugh about this. It was hilarious. You made great TV. Not a like, hey, that was dumb, right?
He'd be like, that was the only choice he had to make. Like,
which, hey, he was a competitor. He wanted to stay in the game. It kind of was.
Yeah.
The second part of that is at the end, you guys win. There's a bar set up on the beach next to where you guys are competing, that when people get eliminated, they can go have some margaritas, or in possibly your case, when you win, you could celebrate with some margaritas. Let me play this quick clip for you, and then I want you to explain what maybe was going on here, how the celebrations unfolded that day for you.
Today's winner, it's not a surprise. They were in it to win it from the beginning. Dan and Tara from Road Rules. Yeah! Don't drink and drive, man. Don't drink and drive.
Tara and I have gone on what we like to call a little bit of a slump, and we just took a huge step out.
Nice. Easy, Dan, easy.
I'm happy as hell.
We finally won something, and it's a car! I love my my new Saturn SC2.
And I agree.
So,
Man,
so with
I
that,
haven't seen that.
did you, was there some time between your win and when they actually filmed the announcement of you winning? And did you just go chug margarita? Was that beach just a little slippery? Did Tara maybe push you a little bit there? How did that stumble come about? And what was what was the feeling of winning your second car, the second time you'd won a car in challenge history?
That show, I like grew a mustache for that show.
It looked good.
What you can't. Hey, thanks, buddy. Yeah, you can't really see it like for the first half of the show. It took like the whole half of the show for it to get thick enough you could see it. That was where I first brought out the blue blockers. I had been buying blue blockers. This is back when in 2000 when you can buy blue blockers for like $15 at Walgreens.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I'm just gonna like throw it out there that like this was way before Zach Galifianakis. This is way before. I mean, I brought blue blockers back, and there's video evidence of it. So I was in, and that whole thing, like I was doing prank or pratfalls like the entire time. I was just doing Chevy Chases. Like I think I did it like that show. I think, didn't we do a tandem to like start the show, like landing on the beach kind of a thing? I can't remember.
Yeah,
the skydiving thing. And so I was doing pratfalls the entire time. So
love it.
That one, to answer your question, I was not drinking a lot. That was my first margarita, but they were like, okay, you're going to walk over there. And I was like, oh, this is going to be my
perfect time.
My Arthur moment. I don't know, that like makes me an old guy, but Arthur is like the classic.
I'm with you. Oh yeah.
That was him. Like the martini falling and saving the martini, but still falling. That was all just, I was doing pratfalls then. So that's what that was.
Constant entertainer. And obviously, it worked well enough it was one of the, clips
they
I
loved
instantly
it.
pull from that episode of like, that was so great. Yeah.
I mean, I think, did I do a pratfall in the game show one? I feel like I fell down like when I got introduced on the game show one of that show.
And I'm glad you brought it up. I'll quickly ask you about that game show. The trivia, I forget, some sort of couples, I don't know what they called it exactly, but it was couples trivia where you answered questions about your partner. They came back in, you found out if you were matching, Newlywed Game type of style. And your performance, everyone's performance in it, it's probably the best daily challenge of the season, and trivia has now become this like staple classic part of every challenge season, and this is the first ever real version of it they did, and it's so good. It's such gold. The clip actually I played for you before we started recording to see if the clips would work was from that, where you answered who the cast, if you had to sleep with someone in the cast. You went with Sean, everyone else went with Timmy, so they thought you went with Timmy, which Timmy was the clear obvious choice. Timmy even went with Timmy. That was that as fun in the moment as it seemed like it was, and was everyone having as good a time with that as it seemed? Because that seemed, of the second half of the show when it's just the 12 of you and Mark and Eric, that seemed like kind of the highlight moment where like everyone here is having a great time. They're all like really enjoying themselves. No one seems to be having a bad day. They're happy they're still here, happy they're still having this experience.
I think you read it right. I think like when I was doing it, I didn't know that it was that cool of an experience, but like after, when I saw it, and like I just remember thinking Mark Long is really cool. I was like, he is.
They
so
get
cool.
So into it.
He's so in. He did like all of his lines in that one. I was like, oh, this is Mark Long's like what he is like his best thing. Or like I was like,
yeah.
He was like just totally cool in that moment. I was like, oh.
He committed to the bit hard, and was just the best game show host.
Yeah, and like,
you're like, you could be on Game Show Network for the rest of your life if you want. Like, this is your demo.
When you see somebody in their element, that's what everybody like wants to see, and like everybody latches onto. And I was like, I didn't think I was gonna latch onto Mark Long, but at that point, I was like, man, that's the coolest shit. And so I remember that and thinking, but I think in terms of it just turned into one of the coolest things that we ever did in terms of I think the production and direct, like Buna Murray got really good stuff out of it, and you got to kind of see more of a personality, and you could see that, ooh, maybe this, like you said, this is something we should keep doing, because it just was like a special kind of, they just stumbled on something with that whole game show thing and how it worked out.
Yeah, they need to. I'm glad that trivia in some form became a staple of the show. That version of it, though, the like Newlywed style, like let's let them sit down, let's let them have drinks, like if they want to, like that style of it was just so fun. It brought out so much more.
Yeah. Cool. Yep.
Final thing, then two final things on this season, and then we'll get to your third and final season that you did. Challenge history was made. You were a part of a lot of different challenge history being on the third, fifth, and ninth season. Lots of things were changing. You were a part of like the first time this happened, you know, like trivia. We just talked about so many things. One thing that you were the first to ever be a part of, and then the only one, at least, that we've ever seen on camera. There's some rumors that it's maybe happened other times off camera, but on camera, there was a plot hatched to split money between the teams. It started with early in the season, Real World decided, we tell the people as we eliminate them, don't worry, we're going to send you some money when this is all over to try to ease their feelings. But then at the end of the season, Road Rules and Real World come together. Almost everyone, not everyone seemed to agree, but almost everyone. And there was some sort of deal of, if you win, you split some of the money with us. If we win, we split some of the money with you. Everyone pair up. It seemed like maybe you and Sean were a pair of people who were, you know, in on that together. Was this as real as they made it seem on camera? And did Sean ever send you any money after the fact? Did the deal actually go through after the fact?
We totally dealed that one out. You know, it says, you know, it looks like I didn't win all the shows, but I actually did, because that one we split the money. I was with Sean.
The one who wrote the literal legal contract on paper. So if anyone was going to go through with it, we wrote that out. I doubt that would be like usable in court. Not binding.
No, I don't think so. I think one of the people had problems, like, so because we all paired up with somebody, because it was the 6 on each side, and as I remember, someone didn't get the money, but Holly. Sean. But what's that? Hallie did.
Well, at least from what they show in the show itself, is Holly was the only one who didn't agree to it, which left Coral on the other side without someone, because then Coral gloats about it after they win, of like, I don't have to split my money with anyone. Like, she didn't want to split the money. I won. Too bad. I don't have to split money. You all have to split money. And it's like, Coral's the big winner. She's the only one that didn't have to give up half the money.
I think, that now that you say that, that I think that was the deal. And I think maybe one other person just like had a bad person to deal with. So they were like, I'm not going to send you the cash. I can't remember who it was, but
because Theo has there's a very, one of my, it's not fun for him, I'm sure, but a very fun moment of how great he was at just being an entertainer when he's not even trying was right afterwards. He makes a phone call, and like right as whoever he's calling answers, he's like, what's up? I just lost $50,000. How's your day going? And it's just like, oh, damn. Like, I feel so bad for you. But it also seems like maybe you don't think you're getting any money from whoever beat you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I came out good on that one, and Sean gave me the money. So it was, we split that one. It was the greatest. That one production, like almost, and those like final challenges, the last couple ones I went on, production, I think kind of made it so, you know, they wanted, whoever they wanted to won.
Yeah.
That one, the 2002, I remember I had to dive off a sailboat and like go like take something off like a knot underneath the ocean.
Yeah,
like
and it wouldn't come off.
Something out. And so like we dive down there, and there's like the two things, like the Real World side and the Road World side, and like Real World side was like one loop, and you just went whoop, and ours was like this knot of like, it was the football size or like a basketball size knot frayed, and there was no possible way that you were going to dive down at like 30 feet, or not, it wasn't 30 feet, it was probably like 15 feet. And then you're like, oh, now I got to like untangle this. We're like, this is not happening. I was like, okay, they, you know, and then that happened too on the 2004 I feel like
The
they
women
made
couldn't
it.
find the key.
Yeah, they couldn't find the key or something,
Which
and it was like
you were way ahead.
production
but
just made it. Yeah,
yeah.
we were gonna win anyway, but like there was a couple moments like that where it's like they just take this is our game show. We can do whatever we want, and we're gonna make the people win who we want to win.
Yeah, and plus
Definitely.
those are the earliest. I mean, this season was literally the season 5 ballot season was the first ever like final mission. Really, they had done one on Extreme Challenge right before it, but it was like a 1 mile, just push this car from one end to the other. There wasn't like anything else to it other than just like do this. This was the first one with like stages. I will ask though, that definitely tripped you up. You guys took a lead though later in that. If I gave you the Tower of Hanoi puzzle right now, the puzzle that ultimately tripped you all up and gave Real World the chance to pass you, could you do that puzzle? Do you even remember what that puzzle is?
I'm terrible at riddles. Like I'm terrible at that, like that thing right there. Like I'm really smart. I'm really like smart and that kind of stuff. I think I have like riddle anxiety. And so anytime I get something like that, where it's like just a little bit of a brain trick, I think I just kind of get like, I just shut down or something. So yeah, I'm not good at
brains.
Yeah.
I never like when people are like, judge people on the shows are like, you're either smart or you're dumb if you can do puzzles or not. It's like, no, puzzles are like their own category of the brain. Super intelligent people could be horrible at puzzles. Super not that intelligent people could be brilliant at puzzles. It's just kind of how your brain works and how it matches up with each different one. But I will, as just a tip, we'll at the end of this talk about All Stars. But if you ever were to end up on a game show again, that specific puzzle, the Tower of Hanoi, comes up a lot in the challenge and other places. So definitely want to. It's one you can just look up the answer and learn very quickly and easily. So, but
that's my go-to is like the Google riddle, like it's just like figure it out. And people are like, oh my God, you got that. I'm like, I know.
You're like, I have the internet. It's in my pocket all day long.
I'm self-aware. I know I'm not going to get these riddles. I just go right to the Google.
I don't need to waste my time thinking about that. I can just find out the answer. So then we move a couple years later, you come back. What ends up being for your last season, we'll talk about that in a second, but you come back, Battle of the Sexes 2 in challenge time. This is going from season 5 to season 9. And in that time, a lot of the game changed in a really big way, but then some of those changes didn't show up in Battle of the Sexes 2. Specifically, the game had gotten a lot more physical. There started to be like football pads being worn from time to time and different stuff. And they started having eliminations on season 7 and 8 that for season 9, when you come back in, they don't do those eliminations. It's the last season to never have a voting versus you two people have to go in and actually do something head to head. Were you watching the seasons in between being on? Did you know about any of the changes in the game or have any expectation coming into this Battle of the Sexes 2 of like, it's going to be way different because I've seen that they're doing this stuff or I've heard from other people they're doing this stuff now? Or did you have different expectations going into that season?
That going into those, it was the time of where I thought, I was like, okay, when is this going to get like Fear Factor? Because we hadn't done that stuff and I had seen Joe Rogan on those stuff. And so leading up to those, that was where they started making people eat weird shit and like do that kind of stuff. And
the season right before you is literally the challenge. It should have been called the Challenge Fear Factor. The Inferno is season 8, and every one of the eliminations is literally something that happened on Fear Factor that they brought into the show. And it's like, oh, they're leaning into that.
And so I kind of felt like that was going to be more a part of what we did, but it just wasn't. Like, I mean, we only had to like eat some gross like bugs and some honey, and like it wasn't that terrible. I thought it was going to be way more.
Yeah.
But that was the mentality going in. It was kind of a foreign thing, like going into that. Like we didn't really expect that. Because there's a bunch of people in the cast who had been on the season or 2 prior. Was there anyone like when you first got in the house and learned what the game was that was like, oh, we like don't have to do eliminations or anything like that they've added recently? Like it's back to this style of game, or was everyone just like, this is what we're doing? They've done Battle of the Sexes once before. It'll be like that. For me, it wasn't in my wavelength. Like I wasn't thinking about the elimination stuff, it wasn't put in there yet. And I would be the type of person, like, I didn't like kicking Derek off on that one, you know, like, because I don't know, I'm just not that kind of person. So, you know, for me to like not feel that, then I really don't think that was, they just weren't doing it yet. And they hadn't figured out that that was like a big part of the drama that they could bring to those shows, you know?
Yeah, for sure. With the season, you mentioned you had to get rid of Derek, one of the very few people that, well, I guess you got rid of people the whole way down. You had to get down to 3, but one of the few times that you or the men's team at all had any actual friction at all, because when we met at Challenge Mania a few weeks ago, the first thing I wanted to ask you about was this men's team from this season and how you guys didn't just dominate, like you dominated the competition part of it. That was one thing, but part of that, the reason I thought from the outside that you did so was because of how carefree and how good of chemistry and camaraderie that group of guys seem to have. You're in your own house. The girls have a house. You guys have a house. You're doing your own thing. It seems like you're just chilling, having a great time the whole time. Every person that you eliminate, save for maybe, and even a Derek gets like a really nice send off. You guys have a little party for him, toast to him. Everyone talks about him being a great guy. Every person that goes home does it with a smile on their face. There's a big send off. You guys have, the chemistry is just amazing. It made, as I told you before, it almost makes for a boring season of TV where all the storylines of the season have to do with the women's team, because you could see production being like, these guys just like each other. They're just hanging out, having a good time. There's not like, we're looking for some drama and whatnot in here. And there's a little of it over here. So we'll look over here. How amazing was it being a part of that group of guys? Was it as fun and, you know, kind of carefree, good camaraderie as it seemed like from the outside? Or was there a little more tension or divide that maybe we weren't seeing?
I mean, I think you said it in terms of how it was set up. Like, we were on this resort in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the guys were in one big house and the girls were a golf cart ride away in their big house. And so, yeah, there was no dudes that like really started anything or were like selfish or weird. So we all just got along, and it was just like girls against guys the whole time. And so, yeah, they were like, we would go over to their place to party and just like mix shit up and like drink and stuff. And then, you know, but like, yeah, all the drama was happening over there. We didn't care at all. Like, it was not a part of our, so I just remember that being that way. Like how that was set up was, you know, cause like the earlier challenges, we were like just closer together. But I think that, I don't know. I think that's how guys are you're gonna have that. Like, guys are just gonna get along more like that because, you know, 20 dudes or 15 dudes, like, we're used to being in a team mentality where there's light competition, but it's not personal. It never feels personal. Whereas you get like 20 girls in the house and they're gonna create more stuff than the dudes would. That's kind of what I think went on.
We saw that this season and the previous Battle of the Sexes season. They've kind of both went the same way. A lot of great people involved on both sides, but both times it was kind of like the guys team was just chilling. It was like, it's fun when we get to compete, and otherwise we'll just hang out, and some of us will be here at the end. And the women got a little bit more personal and was ultimately kind of the reason the guys teams did so well both of those seasons. Let me ask you this multiple choice then.
Yeah.
If I told you get a week-long vacation at an Airbnb, everyone's staying in the same Airbnb for a week, do you pick who you have to go with? Do you pick this men's team, your original Road Rules cast, or the final 12 people from Battle of the Seasons? Which group would you pick? Which would be the best to hang out with for a week? You all have to live together again, though.
I'm gonna say the Battle of the Seasons.
Okay.
You know, that final, that was just beautiful, man. It was just like there were 12 of us like hanging out in Cabo, and
14 because you guys, Mark 14. And Eric, the best job in the world.
Oh yeah. Oh, but God, yeah.
I always say that's the best gig any challengers ever got, is those two getting to host, not play that season, because then they're guaranteed there the whole time. They can have fun. They're not a part of any of it. They just get to, you know, make up a new bit every night and be a Newlywed host or whatever.
That was just tropical hanging out. It was, that would be the coolest.
Speaking of Mark and Eric and then Theo, you guys do by the end of the season, it's clear there's a little bit of an alliance between the four of you. I know you referenced it when you talked with Scott and Derek on Challenge Mania, that there was at least agreement going into the season that then you never really had to like live up to until maybe right at the very end when there was 5 of you left. Brad ends up being the, second to last to go home, the 5th person on the men's side. And there was a little bit of like, he kind of realized like, oh, it seems like, Dan and Eric stepped up to be captains today very quickly. And it seems like there's a very clear and obvious, like Brad's the one that's got to go home because the other 4 of us. So was that a real alliance that was like ahead of time? Like you guys talked about, like, we're going to have each other's back. And did that come from the time you spent with them on Battle of the Seasons, or were you talking or hanging out with Mark and Eric between then?
Yeah. How did that happen? Because, well, they hit me up beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had been with Theo,
Yeah,
on the previous one. So that was the connection, because I didn't really know Mark or Eric before then, I don't think. Anyway, so they just called me up, and it was, very casual, because we had no idea how the thing was going to go. We didn't know there was going to be 3 people at the end. We didn't know if there was even going to be kicking people off. It was just hey, we're going to try and do an alliance. And then how it worked out was like, we all did really well in this stuff. So we never had to like play the deal until the very end. Like you said, with Brad, we just had to do the one move at the end where we had to get him to like, be on some other side of it. And, I mean, it just worked out perfect. We didn't have to do anything. Like we didn't even have to really use the alliance.
Yeah. Then it comes up a little with Brad, but then the 4 of you do make it to the end. And another really, really impactful and cool moment that you were a part of then is when you get to the final 4, there's 2 parts to what happens. You have one final challenge before the like final one. And in that one, before it, Mark and Eric come to you and Theo and they say, look, you guys, you deserve to be in the final 2. It's going to be one of us. One of us will be the ones that goes home. You 2 are in the final 3 no matter what. Was that something that had been discussed before out of the 4 of you, or at any point during the season when you realized like, hey, they told us there's going to be 3 of us left. The 4 of us are kind of have this little thing going on, or was it not mentioned until right when it truly came down to like, there's 4 of us left. We got to talk about this. And those 2 guys just decide to be awesome guys and be like, hey, you 2 are in, you 2 are good. It'll be one of us.
The way I remember it, I don't think we knew it was just going to be the final 3, because we didn't have to like deal with that. But then right at the end, I just remember because Mark went home, right?
Yeah, he eventually sacrifices himself by throwing the challenge, which is the other part of this is they tell you guys, you 2 are going to be in it. It'll be one of us. It seems like Eric is going to be the choice, but then you get to the challenge and you realize that because of like, if you're a captain and you win, you're safe. If you're a captain and you lose, you can go home. You guys make Eric a captain, Mark not a captain, and you're like, or however you did it, you're like, we're going to win and Eric's going to go home. But then you realize, Mark realizes, hey, it would be really good for us if of the 4 women left, we'd kind of like Arissa to be here, and they made her a captain because they think they're going to lose.
Yeah.
What if we lose on purpose and I'll go home? Yeah. And the 2 questions that come with that, because it's a crazy moment. Obviously, Mark, outsized influence and figure in the challenge world, for him to hook up his buddy Eric in this way. Those 2 are the first ever road ruler and real worlder and whatnot. But one, the throne challenge is as well executed of a throne challenge as anyone's ever done. You guys, it seems pretty obvious to us watching on camera. The women don't know at all. Was that as fun? Yeah. Because you guys are running around the corner of the building laughing like, I can't believe they didn't realize that was totally on purpose, and come back straight face. How much fun was that? And how was it shocking at all that Mark was like, hey, we should do this and I'll go home. It's fine.
It wasn't shocking. I remember we just like, when it came to the head like that, it was just like, okay, we'll do it. And then I remember thinking, okay, well, Mark's just got to trust that we're going to pay him the money, which we did, so it was a very matter of fact, simple kind of thing. Throwing that thing, I remember feeling, I can't believe that they didn't think that we were throwing this. Like, I remember also thinking, I don't like being up on this plank, like outside of the building, and I don't want to fall. Like, I really don't want to fall. So when the choice was made to me that I could just like fake a fall and not even have to do it, I was like, all right, yeah, that sounds great. I'll just like, but I mean,
Get it over quick.
I feel like I just like, I didn't even try to jump. I felt like I just kind of looked like scared and just kind of grappled onto the plank. Like I was like, this looks
You kind of
really,
collapse
really
onto
obvious.
it, and hold on. Yeah,
looks
the
really
others
obvious.
like do really silly, like I'm on
Yeah.
one foot, I'm going
Yeah,
down, and it's
yeah.
like that's obviously Mark and Eric and Theo and Dan have better balance than this. Like, have you been paying attention the
we're
whole
all
months
like
you've been here? They're
athletic
pretty good at this
dudes.
stuff. Like,
Yeah.
there's a reason they're here and they've won
Yeah.
every challenge up until this. But
I don't know, they weren't thinking.
so, final thing on just final specific thing, at least, to Battle of the Sexes, to another piece of challenge history you were a part of. The first ever overnight challenge of any sort, and the first overnight final challenge ever. You guys are interrupted, your final dinner. A bunch of people come in wearing ski masks. Johnny Mosley is clearly with them, but it's also meant to be some sort of, scary. They're smashing stuff. They're, ordering you outside. Was that moment, did you know the moment that happened that like, there's nothing wrong here? That's Johnny Mosley, and clearly this is like for the show. Was there any nerves at all?
No, well, the happening of it was surprising. We were sitting around eating dinner. I did not expect that at all. But like a really funny part of it was like, one of the worker guys that we had talked to and like hung out with for a month or whatever, he had been talking about this dinner for weeks. Like, I mean, like 2 weeks for sure. I mean, which was like the lifetime there, because we're there 24/7. Like, it's like each day is like 3 days of happenings. And he was so excited to make this dinner, and he probably prepared for like 3 days, and like we got served it, and they came in and just like full steaks, just like smashed the plates and did the whole thing. Like, I just still remember we were like in this backyard compound of this big main building or whatever. And so I just still remember off in the distance, just hearing him be like, fuck, like he was so pissed. Anyways,
I think they would have roped him in on it and let him know, like, hey, you don't have to work too hard. Like,
but they wanted like him to have his reaction and like getting us excited about the dinner and to have like it be like, and so anyway, when it all went down, I was kind of actually more like thinking about that. I was like, man, this guy, like, I feel so bad for that dude. And, but then I was thinking, okay, this is going to be kind of a weird thing. They took us right to like this, like big auditorium room where we slept, and it was completely in the dark. And like, so that kind of sucked. That was like a good 10-15 hours of like, what are they going to make us do here? So then I was kind of like, because that was a point where like you could have been sitting in the dark and someone could have just reached up and grabbed you. So there was that. But when we were like at the dinner and like they were doing this whole thing, and like, Mosley came in, the ski mask or whatever they came in, like I wasn't scared then. But when I was at night and it was about like hour 3 or 4, and I was like, okay, it's fucking pitch black here. Like, this is fucking weird. Like, what are they going to make us do? And then we just went and did like running and like a triathlon course for the thing. So it wasn't, it never scared me. I thought it was gonna, but it never did.
How did that night of the 6 of you having to in the dark for 10 to 12 hours in that room compare to back on Challenge 2000, where they made you and your team go into the same little office room for 24 hours as a mission, which is literally the whole purpose of was to drive you crazy?
That's a bouncing ball one.
Yeah, you guys had to bounce the tennis ball. I think your team figured out how to rig the air conditioner to blow the ball or whatever.
Yeah.
How did those compare? Which one was the worst experience of being locked in a room for hours on end with your cast members?
I mean, I think like the first one was worse because we were newer at it. Like the one that was in 2004, we were just like, okay, what, like we know we're not gonna die, and we know we're not gonna get hurt, and they're just gonna do something, whatever. I felt like it was there just was no like special magic that could scare me anymore. That's how I felt.
Gotcha.
Like it.
So you win Battle of the Sexes 2. You guys go on, you win that final pretty easily. I might add, even with or without the lost keys snafu that we previously mentioned. But you win. It's your second time winning in 3 seasons. Made the final all 3 times. As we said earlier, you got money. You got paid on the one that you didn't win, quote unquote. But then they never call you again. And was it truly like, did they truly never call you again? Was there never any other opportunity to go back on the show?
They didn't call me. They didn't. Yeah. I was different. I mean, I don't think the first couple shows I was on, there was like, they made romance stuff out of me. And so that's why they had me back. And then the last show I was on, nothing happened. I didn't fight with anybody and there was no fucking. And so I just think that's what it was. I mean, I think if you're on there and you're doing one of those 2 things, you're going to come back, you know?
Yeah.
And I even, a few years later, I like reached out to them and was like, hey, you know, I'll do all that. I don't care. You know, like I just, the 2004 one, I just was kind of like, I don't know. I kind of was over it for a while. I didn't want to like talk about myself anymore. And, you know, which was like kind of stupid in terms of, you know, having like a career or making money or being able to perpetuate it. But I think that's just where I felt like, and
I think that happens to even the ones that do it, you know, that have done 15 of them or whatever now have either taken breaks or had seasons or moments where you're like, oh, they're clearly like, I would understand from the outside why that would be like, yeah, this is really, really amazing. But when you do it a couple times in a row, depending what else is going on in life, you're like, I'm not that into it this time, but I might come back, or other time I might be all the way into it, you know?
Which is weird to say because it's really like a unique, awesome experience. And I'm like so grateful I've got to do all this stuff, you know? So I never wanted to discount it, but I think that's just where my mentality was. And I was enough. And I mean, I was enough to be like, I think I remember telling peers, I don't really want to talk about stuff anymore, you know? And so was that like kind of selfish of me or like whatever, I guess, I don't know, but yeah, it's definitely how it went down.
Not exactly what they're hoping to hear, but is also at the same time, like the realist you can be with them. And you're like, you want my authentic self. This is how I'm actually feeling right now. So, you know, good on you.
It's a funny thing. Like, I feel like most of like half the people that go on these things that I've experienced, half of them are like there because they like have a personality that's like a genuine and genuinely interesting personality. And then the other half of the people, I feel like they really kind of cast people that have like emotional issues that like they are there for this like craziness, you know? And so it's
one of the hard parts of the show.
Yeah.
That was clearly something that was certainly happening in like the early eras when you were on, and something that became a big problem for them later. I always talk about the production from the beginning of the show to now in all reality television to some extent is trying to walk this fine line of, we want people to argue and fight. We want people to hook up and it to be messy and whatever. We want drama, but we only want it up until this point, because cross that point is some things, you know, that we wouldn't be proud of, or that we don't, you know, or, you know, morally, you know, where's that line morally and whatever, and how do we walk it without crossing it? And the show definitely in the seasons to come after you were on has a run of seasons where it got really, really bad. And there was clearly like, we're putting people in this house and we're taking advantage of them, and we're doing it because we think, you know, this is going to be great television, but it's horrible for them and we know it. And that became a massive problem, led to a lot of issues, and they had to kind of self-correct of like, we can't do that. That's not the right way to do this. It might be good TV maybe, but it's not maybe the best thing morally to like take someone who we think this is a bad environment for and put them there just because of that exact reason. But I think they were still learning that. It took a while to learn that, and they were still learning that in these seasons.
Did they ever like come out and cop to that? Like, I feel like, no, how I
The
just I feel like they're gonna make the show be as interesting and as dramatic as possible to make the most ad dollars. And so like unless they're getting fined or like some other entity is making them not create that kind of thing, what is the motivation for them not to bring, people that have some kind of, emotional things that's like are gonna flare up while they're on camera. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't think they've ever had to hold back on that. I mean, the people who go on it, they sign waivers and they are adults they're giving up whatever they put on camera. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I think they've just there's one real big instance. I think they just had to try to adjust where that line is a little and the types of people that they could bring in who could get them up to that line without crossing it, or different types. The big one was in the seasons, or was Tanya on Battle of the Sexes too with you guys? I don't think she was.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's probably the example I go to. I'm like, that person, like,
she's the one that eventually it was like, hey, like, it's very clear watching the show that this is not an appropriate environment, and you're kind of taking advantage of that. Putting her in it makes great television, but it ultimately led to some really unfortunate things and lawsuits and all kinds of different stuff. And so that's the only time.
I didn't know about any of those lawsuits or whatever, but if I was going to pick someone that like, I thought that would all happen with, I was like, I felt bad. I was like, this is just sad all around. I mean, isn't this plucking out people that, I mean, I was like, there's like people that have like a certain upbringing, and then like the other half of the people are all like from like estranged families and just these backgrounds. I'm just like, oh man, like I feel so sad. Like, dang, it's just not right.
Yeah, it's there. They had to kind of adjust. Like, we're looking for volatility, but we're not looking to like exploit someone's, their circumstances in life. What's led them there to like exploit that volatility. We want people who are just, we can feel a little better about them freaking out.
Well, good. I mean, what were the lawsuits? Who brought lawsuits? Tanya brought lawsuits against people?
Yeah, without going in too much detail, there was a lot of bullying that happened on the show, and eventually there was a sexual assault lawsuit against two cast members put forward by Tanya. That was all settled out of court, out of public.
She went after the cast members, or she went after MTV?
The cast members and the show, everyone was involved in the proceedings, and there's a string of seasons. The Island and the Ruins are the two specific seasons where it's it's not good. It's just real bad. And I'm surprised they have those seasons available to watch, because it's very obvious that it's not a great things going on. But I think that was the era of the show. They had to look themselves in the mirror and be like, all right, we crossed that line. We still want this. It's still the same show. We still want these types of personalities, these types of people, but how do we do it in a little more moral way, or a way where we're a little safer? There's like a fence on that line and we can go up to it, but we don't cross it as much.
Well, and therein lies the penalty for doing that. Like they never had, I mean, there was no motivation for them not to, do that, but then they had to pay the price and take a little,
had to learn some lessons.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I hope she got paid, and I hope that, like,
hope she got everything she needed out of it.
Right. But anyway, so we don't have, but I'm just like personally interested in what all ever happened to that. Cause they can.
If you want to hear more of it, I'm actually next week about to, in my rewatch series, where the next season up is The Island, which is season 16. And it's when a lot of that type of stuff starts occurring. And so I'm having some people on that can hopefully speak to it a little bit better than myself. And so if you're interested in it, that'll be out there. As for, so you don't get any calls back. You don't get to go back. Yeah. If you would have gotten the chance, it sounds like you definitely were up for it, and maybe it'd come around to being like, I'm ready to do this again. I'm ready to go in. Did you continue watching the show? And do you think if you would have got the chance to go back, would you have liked, you were right on the precipice of when the show really got kind of competitive and physical and became, like more sport elements mixed into the game show, fun atmosphere, silly atmosphere. Do you think you would have liked, if you would have got to go back on, being a part of that more kind of sport-centric, physical, cutthroat game? Or would you have maybe been like, maybe I liked how it was before?
I would have, I would have done anything. I would have, if it was just going to be like a straight up real world mentality, just go somewhere for a while and do it. The adventure is there. Like for me, it's just a fun and crazy experience. So I'd do it anytime. I don't know. It's not like a dramatic answer, but it's the real one.
What do you, if anything, what do you think was kind of the biggest lessons you learned about yourself from doing these shows, or what, when you, after each season, or after you kind of knew not getting calls back, that chapter of my life might be over for the time being, and you reflected on it? Was there anything you really like learned about yourself, felt changed about yourself from these big, crazy experiences?
I mean, yeah, for sure. Like the biggest thing that I learned about myself was it was just putting myself out there and just gaining strength and confidence and just, being somewhat revealing about myself, but also just traveling and leaving your own city and, being a part of a big TV production. And it's a big adventure that you learn. You just learn how strong you are, but you also learn like how weak you are too. And so mainly I gained strength from it. But I also saw, more personal on like being on TV and that whole experience of having the cameras on you when you're just trying to live your life and be real. That personally, I'm a very into like just personality and psyche and all that kind of stuff. And so I learned a ton about myself and how, when I was on those, I think I was very guarded in terms of what I revealed and very aware of the cameras. I don't think I ever really was comfortable, and so not that I would like strive to be like, oh, I should be comfortable in front of cameras. Like that's a weird thing to begin with. But I learned like socially just so much about where I am like scared of like revealing stuff or scared of anything, where my fears are.
Yeah.
It's very telling, and then you get to see yourself on camera reacting in all those situations. So it's a 100% social experiment that I learned from.
Did you always watch every season, or were you one of the ones that's like, I did it, I don't need to rewatch it or anything?
I watched my shows. I just enjoyed it. It was like watching home movies of a vacation, for me. So I always enjoyed watching those, but I stopped watching it after, I think I just stopped watching MTV and those kind of shows after a year or so after the last one I was on.
Yeah,
and
you're
and
hitting
then
the
I think
age where you're not the target demo anymore.
I was just, honestly, I stopped watching TV. I stopped watching TV. I started doing music more, or being more that way. And so I'd sit down and watch TV and I'd get antsy after like 20, 30 minutes. So, but before that, like growing up, I watched a lot of TV. So it was just more a part of my life.
Yeah. I want to ask about the music in 1 second. Before I do, we've mentioned a bunch of their names already, but you being a legend of the show yourself, and the game, the show, everything, the challenge in general, you also happened to cross paths with basically every single legendary figure from like the first era to 2 eras of the show. Literally if you were to make the list of like the most impactful, the like biggest names from it, you did a season with pretty much everyone from that first era. So I'm going to say someone's name. I want you to give me one word, the first word that comes to your mind to describe that person, what you think of when I say this person's name.
Right.
And then if you do have a good, story or memory, favorite story or memory of that person, you can feel free to share that as well. The first 4, I got 6 names, but the first 4 of them, literally to speak to like who you cross paths and did seasons with, are the 4 people I think are on Challenge Mount Rushmore, which to me, a lot of people throw out like, who's your Mount Rushmore? And they mean the best 4 people of all time. That's not what it is, because the real Mount Rushmore, it's not the 4 best presidents. It's like the 4 early impactful. If it wasn't for these people, we wouldn't be what we are.
Yeah.
So those 4 people in the challenge world are the first 4 people I want to ask about. Number 1, Veronica. One word to describe Veronica and any memory or story you got of her.
Oh, Veronica. I don't know why. Maybe just because it's Veruca salt, but I just like salty in a good way, like a salted caramel. She's just like sweet, like salty, sweet, and just like fiery. I guess I don't know. But Veronica is a smile. Like I kind of always see her smile.
Yeah, I always name her. She's the original face of the franchise, the first ever like challenge star, not like road rule star, real world star, but challenge star. She became the star of the show. She was on 7 of the first 10 seasons and was very much like the original first ever, like, you're the face of the franchise. If we have to put one person on like a poster for the show, it's Veronica. So then we've got Coral. You did 2 seasons with Coral. What's the first thing you think of when I bring up Coral?
Like one word, she's like I want to say like an anomaly to me. She's amazing.
She's a true one of one.
Yeah, she is. She's the best trash talker I've ever heard of anybody. Like, I mean, the way she can, like, I don't ever want to mix it up verbally with her. You know, like she's like, I've never heard someone more naturally just be able to, she's the funniest person. Like there's, you know, she's in my top like 5 funniest naturally. So Coral's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then always kind of going right with Coral hand in hand, the Miz,
that guy,
which you got to see you were there for like the literal making of the character, the Miz, the transformation, the middle of the transformation was Battle of the Seasons. Some great moments, some tough moments, but
that guy's laser focus. I mean, that he had this little idea and this little thing, and he was just like, I'm gonna like just only exist in the Miz, and that's where he's at, you know, like it's really awesome.
Cool. Yeah. How was it on Battle of the Seasons with him having that kind of focus? Were your teams interacting
I thought
all that much, or were you like ever like, hey, can you just be Mike for the moment, or like you thought it was weird?
That wasn't laser focus. When I stopped, I was just like, okay, this guy half the time is in this character that he will not come out of, you know? And I was like, okay, half of it was like when he drank, you know? So I was like, okay, this guy's not a good drinker. So half of it was that. And then the other half was like, okay, no, he really is going into this thing, and, you know, the type of thing where he would be that character. And I didn't really know that he was doing that because he wanted to be WWE. Like, I didn't know that. Like, so it was doubly weird. I was just like, okay, but I respected it. I was like, okay, you're doing what the hell you want to do, and it's different, and people obviously gotta give you shit for it. So I think that's cool because you're still doing it. So there was really a weird thing when I saw it, but now knowing, then I say laser focus, I was like, yeah, you did it right, buddy. Like, you know, but you know, thousands of other times people try that stuff and it doesn't like outwardly look successful. You look like
they don't have the focus or the dedication and persistence to be like, no, I'm going to take the laughs and I'm still going to turn this into something. Which
I mean, that's a really cool. I mean, that's what I strive for in my mentality, is to be that like strong and, you know, like impervious to distraction, you know,
and to know that the journey takes a long time. So for almost every single person ever to get to where they're trying to go. Yeah. All right, then 3 others. We've mentioned them all at different points, but to kind of circle back to them. First one, Mark Long.
Man, he's just like, he's the guy. He's the guy. Like, I don't know. Like, part of it is he's the game show host. Like, he's the host. Like so like, I don't know, back in the 70s, like I think there was an actual game show host named Guy something that was like the big guy, but. So I just think of him as Guy, like this.
Yeah. It makes sense when on like a Battle of the Sexes too, it's like the guys team doesn't have a leader, but also Mark's like the leader because it's Mark, and
Yeah.
like everyone's like, yeah, that guy could be in charge if someone ever has to be in charge.
He's the constant accommodator, but he's the constant like leader at the same time. People look
That's
to
what
him.
makes a great leader. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
And then the final two, so you've mentioned they're, you know, kind of maybe your best buds that you came out of the show with, Timmy and Theo. So was that purely just obviously, you know, the three of you end up being the last three guys on the Road Rules team on Battle of the Seasons, and just from all that time together, what kind of brought the three of you together, and is there any like favorite moment that wouldn't have been on camera, you know, outside of the game of, you know, shenanigans you guys are doing, or just late nights chatting or anything like that?
Yeah, those guys. I mean, we were on the show, and it was like 2 weeks at the end of the show. I feel like it was just like the three of us hanging, or I mean, we had our other girls on it, but like it wasn't like, and we weren't like, oh God, we're gonna be the best friends forever or anything like that. But I just know that I met like two of the best personalities that I've ever come across, and in terms of best like entertaining value, but also best like for who they are and how I would want to like model my life after. But so that's kind of how I've like just kind of remained with those guys. But then after that, we kind of like went around the country together, like doing appearances and doing talks and stuff like that. So that's insane to do that. Just do normal life with those two guys. Everywhere you go, it's a fucking scene. It's like you're at the grocery store, and like it's just something's gonna happen, you know. Like I just remember, like we were like at a grocery store in like I think it was LA or something, and nothing had happened for about a half hour. I was like, okay, well, something's about to happen. So we go to the checkout, and like it was something dumb. Like Timmy just like took, like we had eggs, and he just like took the eggs one by one and just started putting them on the conveyor belt, and just stood up at the end of the conveyor belt, and then like looked at the cashier girl and was just like, what's gonna happen now? You know, like I was like, all right, well, this is why I love these guys. Like I don't think to do that kind of shit, you know, like, and you know, and then that became a whole thing. It was like a whole 5-minute thing with the cashier lady, and I was like, this was awesome. Like we just had a whole fun and adventure, and I didn't even think
At
that
the grocery store.
Yeah, so
that?
like
Yeah.
those guys is what it's all about. It's like every moment is a moving on to something adventure like, because that's what they taught me. They're just like the most curious about life in the best way. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, the three of you together get mentioned a lot on this podcast, because I often cite you and Theo as the two people from kind of the first 10 or so seasons, the first era of the show, that kind of get lost a little bit when people talk about like the best people to ever do it, or like the most fun people on the show. Of like the two of you both were very good at the actual competition of the show, and you know, usually won, but we're also really, really good at like, those are authentic people who happen to just be really entertaining and interesting. And then Timmy comes up all the time. He's my favorite cast member of all time. He's,
you had the t-shirt, man. When I
yeah, that was a shout out to Theo and Timmy at the same time, because that was the shirt Theo wore on the gauntlet. But the Where's Timmy shirt, which will be for sale soon on the merchandise site. Getting that set up. But
well, I knew I loved you right when I saw you with that. I was like, dude, this guy is awesome. He knows about the Timmy. I just talked to Timmy last week, and oh man, he's doing so good. It's like, it's so great. Have you seen anything that he's been doing, like with his TV shows and stuff?
I have not, but I'm dying to anything he's a part of to get to watch or interact with in any way, because he was the best then, and I can only imagine he's the best now.
The short of it, he's doing a kid show or whatever, but he's like making up crazy characters, and he is one of the characters on a Nickelodeon show, and oh man, it's awesome to see.
Well, I'm gonna
I
have
feel
to
like
look
I
into
keep
that
saying
further.
awesome too much on
No,
this.
no, it's okay. I
I
brought
love
up the
all
Miz,
these people.
so you just
I love all
awesome's on
these
your
people
mind.
that you keep talking about. You know, they're just like favorite personalities. So
Yeah. So after the challenge is, over for you at some point, how soon was music the first thing you turned to, or is that a more recent thing? What did you kind of initially get into right when you at some point realized like, I'm not going to maybe be going on this show for months at a time anymore?
oh, when I first went on it is when I first picked up the guitar. Actually, I had just started to pick up a guitar before I went on the actual show. So 96, I went on in 97 was when I filmed my first show. And so, but I had always sang and I was always into arts and that kind of thing. I was always in like choirs and things in high school. I did musicals early on, but then I quit because of sports. So I've always been a creative singer, performer. Performing, I feel like I'm a rare personality where I feel comfortable up on stage. And it feels like a home to me. Like I'm nervous to go up there, but once you get me up there, I lose track of time and it's like a good experience.
Do you think you would have had that regardless
Oh.
of being on TV, or do you think being on TV helped? As you said
100%.
earlier, that
I
was
was
like
already-
a growing thing.
I don't think being on TV I've always had that performer mentality where I've always was like the lead in plays, or always like if I was like the public speaker, or like I always kind of went towards that. So me going on TV was never like a weird thing for me. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, a weird personality trait is that I actually feel comfortable doing up on stage and just like making stuff up or whatever that is.
What do you think? Was it just always this way that you were kind of drawn to music or the creative process, or was there any specific one of those like shows that you did growing up or anything where like something clicked and you're like, that's what I like. I want to like do that, more of that, please?
I had music and singing and that kind of thing was always a part of me growing up, but I was always into sports. I was never, the music and the creativity part was never like, it wasn't like it was like bad mouth or that I wasn't allowed to do that, but it never got perpetuated or never got like praised. So I was always in sports. So the music and that kind of thing kind of just was like there my whole childhood. And then once I got 18, 19, 20, I was like, I don't know, what do I like to do? Everything else was before everybody else. So the music has always been there, but I didn't really perpetuate it and learn and do it when I was in a youth, because that's not what I worked on. I worked on other stuff. And so when I came to it in my 20s, like I found it because I loved it, but it was in me. I just like didn't ever work it. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going in a good spot with that, but
makes sense.
So then when I was on these shows, I got back. So 1920 was when I first did it. And then by 1999 or 2000, I had picked up the guitar and learned like 50 cover songs. And so from 2000 till 2010, I just played music and cover songs in bars, like in restaurants and doing that. And so, and it was like, it was a drink fest. It's like, I wasn't like totally about the music. I was more about getting the gigs. And I mean, back then I'd make like $300 a night and just like be playing like 4 or 5 nights a week. And just all my friends were all 21 and 22. So everybody came on a Tuesday night to wherever I was. And it was just that fun, so it wasn't. And then when I turned 30 is when I started to like play music and really write songs and
and that's what your focus is now, right?
Yeah,
your own music. I've been going down everything you've got out there on Instagram, YouTube, and elsewhere. It's been a fun deep dive over the last few days after seeing a a brief glimpse, or as you, I believe, called it after the fact, 20% effort on stage at Challenge Mania in the spot. I was like, this is fun. We gotta get some more of this in our lives. And I'm blown away by especially the street performances you've been doing. That's the part where I know you say, like, you know, you're one of the ones that is comfortable on a stage and like that doesn't phase you or anything. That's when I saw those, I was like, that has to have something to do with, like, yes, you have that innately or not, but like that has to be a muscle that was like aided in some way, unlike all the crazy shit you had to do in front of strangers with cameras in the face. But I'm blown away by all of it. Any music and creative arts people that can do it and do it well like yourself are very interesting to me and very fun to learn about and watch do what they do. But the street performance aspect, I was both blown away by how good it all was, and then just the fact that you can do that, like, it seems like the scariest thing in the world to me. Is it not? I know you said before it's maybe not for you, but is there any difference of like that versus like, I've got a gig, there's a stage, people are showing up knowing that I'm going to be on this stage, versus like, I'm going to go out and just pop down a microphone and somewhere and just start playing. And if people vibe with it, great. If they don't, they don't. Is there a big difference between the two? And how do you get the courage to do that?
I mean, first of all, like, it makes me really happy to know that you like just spent time and watched some of that stuff, and the fact that you pick out the street performances of what I've been doing is like makes me happy too, because that is me. Like, as far as I've been able to figure out, like, that is where I want to be, and me, like, performance in the moment. I call it freestyle funk, or just that, like, I'm trying to get to a place where I have the inability to critique myself or like even question what I'm doing. I'm trying to like be totally in the moment from moment to moment. And so like that right there is like my ultimate in life, actually, you know, as best I can tell. And so it's just like great because, you know, I think you are picking it out because you see that I'm like experiencing that energy, and that's what people like feed off of, because it's totally in the moment, you know?
Yeah, it's totally raw, it's totally real. It comes, and you know, even watching it through, you know, a filmed version of it, it comes through that like this is all happening literally in the moment. And in life we rarely actually live in the present moment that we're in. And so then, you know, and I think it happens to everyone, whether you're actually interested or not, it happens to you. You're drawn to when you see someone actually doing something that truly is like, this is happening live, this is real, this is raw, there's nothing thought of before or after. This is like a thing that's happening in the present. We're all kind of, because we don't have that much of that, drawn to it very, very quickly, or at least I am.
Yeah, well, I think you're exactly right. And that's what people are drawn to in any performance, is when you like, it's like listen, like when you hear a voice, like you'll hear a voice, and within like 2 notes or like 3 or 4 seconds, it can totally draw you in and make you totally feel like these crazy feelings where you're just like, whoa, why was that so awesome? And what it is like, you feel that person being free. You feel like, so, and that's the energy that everybody wants, is to have no distraction, have no tension, have no chaos, just be totally enjoying right now. And so when you get a vocal performance that is like that good, like where they're totally enjoying their own experience of it, that's when you get to like feel that. And it's like, I think that's what I'm going for. And so that's why it makes me happy when you tell me that you're experiencing it that way, where you're just like, oh yeah, I get it. He's like just free and feeling it, you know?
Yeah.
And so, and to me, those performances, that's my most strong, like, that's my ultimate image of myself, is that. So,
that's so cool.
Oh yeah. It's how cool is that? I don't know. Like it's taken me a lot of years to get to that, and I don't fully realize how strong and awesome that is. So I'm trying to get back to that, but it's like, it's still hard to go out there and do it.
Yeah.
It's still like hard to get out of the street and be like, all right, I'm just gonna plug in here and just see what goes on.
Yeah, and you've also got limited months up there in Minneapolis. Of a little harder to do that in the dead of winter.
I
As a
think I'm gonna
Chicagoan,
take it out. I'm going on the road. I'm gonna head
that's
south
a good
as
idea.
as the winter months roll.
Maybe
so.
get you a Winnebago for the
Yeah.
music as well as the old TV
My
shows.
plan. I'm gonna go see Timmy out in Santa Monica. So
amazing.
So that's what I'm gonna try and do this winter. Is to let you know a
Weather will
little
be nice
secret,
there.
but
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to do, so I can keep doing these outside performances. Because
that's amazing.
yeah.
What kind of music inspires you, or do you draw your creativity or influence from? Any specific artist, genres, anything that are like, this is what not that you're trying to like replicate or whatever, but that is where your inspiration, your influence might come from.
Mostly we're growing up, I like made up, like without knowing it, I made up like gospel-y kind of church songs. So anything that has that like hand clapping, like harmonies and like gospel-y feel, but also like funk, like the rhythm and the dance and like the feel of it, So I think that those kind of music, like I've 60s soul and 70s funk is like where I started. Like I started out when I started listening to music for what I wanted. It was like 16, 17. It like started in like classic rock and kind of singer-songwriter and that kind of feel. But then once I started getting like 19, 20, 21 and started like getting out and playing music, it was all about Sly and the Family Stone and James Brown and like just rhythm and blues and like funk, anything that makes you dance. So and fucking Bee Gees, like disco and pop songs like that are just awesome to listen to. So if I was to say a genre I listen to the most, it's like funk and soul.
Yeah, you are one that listens to, I know some people I know kind of in the musical world like listen to very different things than what they then are trying to create in a similar world themselves. Or are you one that's like, no, I kind of live in one world, I create in that world, I also enjoy others that are in at least the same atmosphere as myself?
Definitely. I mean, I venture out into like dance music, like a lot of like the like just anything that's DJ music, but to me it's all James Brown, it's all funk, it's all dance music. So like
it's all derived
it's all
from
the
that.
beats. So but like I still have a lot of singer-songwriter. I love the stories and songs, so I'm still on that. So I love blues songs and country songs and ones that are very good stories, singer-songwriter, just cohesive, almost like stories. And so and in funk music and that kind of stuff and dance music, that you get away from the stories being told with the words. So I still like that kind of stuff too. Where it's more narrative that you hear in the words, but funk in that is more just, I just like it because it's more a feeling in your body, and that's where the story's told.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. Well, we will at the end here in a moment, I'll have you let everyone know where all they can find some of the music you're making now, and I'll link all that in the show notes. To go back to the last challenge related, last kind of topic here before we wrap up is, I know from having heard you at Challenge Mania and on their podcast and everything that you are, do I have this correct? You are aware of Challenge All-Stars happening, but you are not watching it. Is that correct?
That's pretty much correct. Yeah, I don't have Paramount Plus. I'm aware of it, and they've hit me up to check for availability for most of them in the past since Mark did the first one or whatever, but they have not booked me for them. So.
Gotcha. But they are, well, that's very positive news though for us that are, would love to see you, that you're on pretty short list of first draft people I would want to get on the show, that they are at least calling and checking availability. Have you been like, I'm willing to do it and it just hasn't been able to work out, or are you not interested?
Oh yeah. No, I
interested?
told them I'd love to do it. It'd be great.
Okay. Well, I know you've said in the past, you're not going to campaign yourself, which is totally fair and justified. I will let you know that myself and others very well are going to campaign on your behalf. So hopefully that's okay that we're doing that for you. Let's imagine a world, though, where you get that call again. And this time the call isn't just for availability, but they say you're on the cast, All Stars 4. You've got 6 weeks. We leave in 6 weeks and you're going. If you get that call and they tell you, it's about 6 weeks or so that you have to prepare, 2 questions. Well, it sounds like are you going? The answer would be yes, assuming, it worked with whatever you had going on at the moment. But the 2 questions then, you have about 6 weeks. Do you start then binging the first seasons of All Stars? So you have an idea of like what's been going on, who some of these people might be, and does your training, do you do anything in preparation, or you just say, hell yes, I get to do this again, bring on an adventure?
The honest answer is I would maybe watch a few of the episodes if I found out who else was going to be on there. I might be like, just to, I don't know, get a frame of reference or who these people are. So that's about all I'd watch for the shows. For the training, I probably wouldn't do too much more than I do. I work out, but I work out like 20 minutes a day, like, cause I just do like really like efficient kind of crazy mobility stuff, So I'd probably like add some cross training stuff in there, but I probably wouldn't go too crazy. I don't know. I wouldn't like, do a Murph every day and like, help it like that. I'd probably say I would do a lot more than I actually would.
Well, I think I like the honesty, because I think most people would say that like, oh, I'm gonna watch every episode so I know everyone's strategy. I'm gonna work out like crazy. You have no idea. And then most of them would not do any of that. A lot do, and I applaud those, because I am one who, if I ever was blessed with the opportunity to hop on one of these shows, I would definitely be going all out. But if you when you get that call, because we're gonna find out to get you that call again, you just send me a message and we'll keep it on the DL. But like, hey, I'm going, and I will send you, if you only want to watch a couple episodes, I'll send you specifics of like,
I would appreciate
okay, here's 60 minutes of content. This will get you all you need to know of what the game is, who some of the big names are right now doing stuff, and what you should maybe be doing to prepare as efficiently as possible.
I mean, if I can't divulge if I'm going on the show, you'll still let me have the links to the shows if I just randomly call you up and be like, hey, I got to start watching this stuff.
Oh, well, you don't
You'll
need
know, but I
old,
can't cop to.
You don't need to watch the old stuff. I'm talking the new stuff.
The new stuff.
Yeah, you can have my login for Paramount. That's fine. I can
okay.
give you that. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
you go back on, you're going to need a little insight
friend.
to the game's it's a whole different world these days, and especially on the men's side of All Stars. All Stars has been very interesting as it launched, of like the flagship show had truly become like, it's a sport. Like, it's, some people jokingly call it like the 5th professional sport. It's a sport. They wear football pads for like a third of the freaking things they do. They're running literal marathons with puzzles and whatever to end triathlons and marathons as the finals, whatever. It's a sport. When All Stars started, it was like, it's not going to be as much of that. And then by the 3rd season in, the men's cast of All Stars 3 is, as far as like physical shape, might have been the most fit cast in the history of the show on the men's side. They're all like 45 or whatever, but they're all like, we have to, like, this is everything to us. This is a sport now. Like, we're going to get into it. And the women have been much more like, I'm like 40. I'm great on television still. I'm not going to like train to run a marathon. That's silly. Why? We're just doing TV again. What are you boys doing? You're dumb. And each are right in their own world. But the men's side of All Stars has been pretty stacked on the physical side.
Well, let me ask you this. Like, I could probably do like 25 pull-ups right now.
Mm-hmm.
How much do I need to train if I go on it?
That part that's a good barometer of just some physical ability, but the only part that matters, the only training I would tell you or anyone else, is just the cardio. I got that. I'm good on that. If you make the final, there is no final anymore that is not going to be at least 15 to 20 miles long of swimming, biking, mostly running, but swimming and biking usually involved. And that's the part where, like, it's 2 different games.
Oh yeah,
The
that
regular game is
yeah.
whatever. Some people are really great at like the individual challenges, the eliminations, whatever. But you
There's
just
only
know,
got to be
like,
like 20% of the people that can do that.
yeah, it's like you get
With
to
the
the end
proficiency.
and it's obvious of like, well, now we're just running a marathon, and a couple of you like run marathons for fun and the rest of you don't. So you might have been great the rest of the time, but you can't win because you can't do that thing at the end. So that's
Well,
the
so
real,
what about these
real
like
one.
physical dudes that are all ripped out? Like, how do they do on those endurance ones? They're good.
The ones that do both, you know, the biggest thing on the funniest thing that happens every single season of the show is they'll cast some new on the flagship one. They'll cast some new massive like former football player that everyone gets all excited because like I don't know if you're at least aware of like the hall brawl has become like the staple thing where they run into each other with football pads. So everyone gets all excited of like, oh, this guy's gonna wreck some shit, right? And then inevitably it's like, well, they do that one elimination once a season. If that person randomly by some chance ends up in it versus another big person, it'll be really cool. Otherwise, they're not that good at this show because, you know, it's the muscles aren't used that often. And if you have to run at the end, it's harder. So it's the people with the mix, it's the people with the cardio background that are definitely coming through and dominating in the end.
Maybe that's how it always was. I was always like a little bit like, oh man, there's like these dudes that are like, you know, more physically bigger than I am, but I mean, they always have to do kind of things that are more body weight oriented, like where you're lifting your own body weight as opposed to like, you know, that tackle drill or whatever you're talking about. Like that one is just straight up. Yeah. If I go up against a 250 pound or 220 pound guy, like, I mean,
it's over. Doesn't matter.
It's probably over. Yeah.
Yeah, because even in your day, the strength thing didn't matter as much. Like you might do one thing where it's like, hey, you have to hang on this thing
but you can't,
forever. But like that's 1 out of 10 times that strength mattered, and the rest of the time, more often than not, just agility, mobility, endurance, and just kind of mental.
You have to
adaptability. Like the mental side of athletics was what has always mattered the most, and that's kind of one of the things that stayed the same throughout all the eras of the show. Is just be an athlete, be adaptable, and also don't take yourself too serious because it's also usually silly, whatever the hell you're doing. It might be physically, but it's also silly, and you gotta be able to handle that. So Dan, with that then, I'll wrap it up here for everyone though that's been listening. Where can they find you? Is there anything you got going on you want them to know about? I will of course, you know, link all of this in the show notes, but you want to let people know where they can find you, where they can keep up with you?
Yeah, please. It's all at Danny Setz. So DANNYSETZ everywhere, I think. So go YouTube I'm trying to put a bunch of stuff out on YouTube. So definitely go there first for subscribe to that. And then I'm just going to keep putting out, like you said, these live videos as much as I can, me singing in the street. So, you know, if people are interested in that, check it, like go to it and let me know. Cause it honestly, it makes me happy to know, like you, like just even spent like 5 minutes, like listening to those songs. Cause they're just like they're like, it's like my heart. It's like talking, you know. So if anybody spends any time with it and gets kind of, you know, Derek said that he kind of got caught down the rabbit hole of watching it, and I was like, oh man, that's what I really want, is just to have people get caught in the rabbit hole of my weirdness.
Yeah, well, I'll say it was a great rabbit hole for me. I enjoyed it. I will be returning to that rabbit hole, and hopefully, you know, if anyone's in the Minneapolis area listening, go catch Dan on one of these amazing street performances. Maybe we get you back down to Chicago, maybe for this other event in November. Maybe we get you out there.
I was gonna do it in Chicago too. I had all my shit with me too, and I think I just got, I don't know, I just got brought in at the last second, so I was feeling unprepared. So I think I just kind of chickened out a little bit. But oh man, that would have been great. I could have set up right in the middle of that football field and just like, I would have rocked it for hours.
That venue actually is perfect.
That would have been
someone
so
to just be like, I'm going to take over this area for the little.
So bit. I promise, if I go to that Chicago, it's in November.
Yeah, it's
Well, it's gonna be
downtown
kinda
though.
cold. Oh,
It's not at the
Yeah.
same Zanies. It's at the smaller
Well,
Zanies. But I know all the spots. I'm
I
a,
can
a
still
former
go on the
Chicago
street.
tour guide. I'll let you know where you should set up.
shut up. Okay, well, I can. I mean, I got a speaker that's like this big, so that's all
Yeah,
we need.
doesn't take a lot of
like,
room.
It doesn't matter as long as the cops don't stop us. We're good.
Yeah. Well,
And I
everyone
think
go-
like all the urban, like the ones like the ones I've been downtown and played here or whatever, and the cops have been totally around us, whatever. They're all just like, honestly, this is like some happy music. I think we're just gonna let this play. Like,
Yeah.
they don't care. Like, they thought that was great. So
you won't get. I don't think you'll get anyone trying to get you to stop. There's a lot of that type of stuff that goes on in Chicago.
it's
and
gonna be
everyone gets their
cold,
room.
but we're gonna at least get it in at some point. Maybe it might be
Yeah.
even just like in a hotel lobby or something. Who knows?
Nice. Well, we appreciate you being here, everyone listening.
buddy.
Go follow Dan, and hopefully we'll be talking again sometime soon.
Anytime, man. Thank you, Jaden.